Welcome, everyone, this is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What if Deku ran a cafe while being a vigilante? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. So this is green tea coffee? Izuku looked over to see some students looking around. This is where you study Tamaki? A loud blonde boy cheered. Beside him was a periwinkle-haired woman and a rather withdrawn dark-haired boy. Come on, let's order something. Green tea coffee sounds like a weird name. Is the guy a green person? Does it sell cold drinks? The periwinkle girl looked around. Let's just order, guys, the blue-haired boy, Tamaki he assumed, mumbled quietly. The trio made their way to the counter. Can we get one mocha, a frappe and a decaf with milk? Sure, pick a table and we'll get it straight to you. Izuku nodded, accepting the payment. The trio disappeared from his view as Momo came from the stairs. Hey, we got another order. I'll run it soon as you got it ready. She nodded with a smile, beginning to wash the cups and bin anything non-reusable. After that I suggest you take your break. Not until everyone else has had theirs. I'm pretty sure Shoji, Jiroda and Shinso called it a day after checking all the stock and deliveries. They're just waiting out the clock now. If that's the case, get Shinso out from and the other two on restocking, he grunted as he finished the first drink. Plus Itsuka and I are going to take ours with you. Yosetsu, Komori and Himiko should be able to handle it. Lunch rush is over now anyway. Momo dried her hands before picking up a clean tray and loading the first two drinks onto it. Fine, when you get back I'll go on break. Tell Yosetsu he's manning counter. Komori and Himiko should be running orders right now. If you see either, let them know too. You got it, boss, she smiled, taking the tray away. Looking for a blonde, a periwinkle and a blue-haired trio. With a nod Momo disappeared from view and Izuku took over the cleaning she had started. Sighing he watched the door. They'd opened in Ua a few days ago and Izuku found himself missing the high street. Sure, they got great views. The apartments were definitely more spacious. The cafe was a large place after all, not some regular street building copy-pasted onto Ua grounds. They even had a patio for outdoor seating and a balcony to match upstairs. It was pretty cool when he thought about it. Plus he paid hardly anything to live in it and it was on UA's grounds, because they wanted his cafe here. Sure, he'd go back to the high street cafe just to make sure everything was alright. Maybe give Tuya a hand if he needed it, but the man had it all under control. Most of the time. Plus Fuyumi and Natsuo had to leave their previous jobs to really hide from Endeavor, so they got the Todoroki treatment, dyed hair and fake names before getting to work in the cafe. Shoto was busy undergoing serious therapy for the trauma he suffered. Izuku occasionally saw him with Hound Dog, walking around the campus or sitting the cafe for a drink. The last he'd heard of the case, Rei had been released from the hospital and several of the doctors and nurses had been arrested for malpractice on her case. Currently she was occupying Momo and Himiko's old room above the cafe, easing her way back into society by getting to know the staff she called neighbors. Alright, let's go. Momo reappeared, sliding the tray into a sink and making herself a drink. The duo walked into his office where Itsuka was sat waiting. Out of my seat, he flicked a hand. The ginger woman smirked and stood up, sitting on his desk beside him as he sat down. Momo sat on his other side on top of the desk too. I take it there is a reason for this? Yes, there is, Itsuka nodded before sipping her drink. How are you? Fine. What? Izuku. She knows. Momo rolled her eyes. She's known for a while, since finding my laptop. Oh, I know what happened when Momo found out too. Since we've moved into this store you've been tired. You're sporting a light limp on your left leg, what gives? That? I just landed wrong. Nothing major, just a grade 1 tear. It'll be fine in a few days. Momo just massaged her forehead with one hand. You tore a muscle and didn't notify anyone? Hey, I thought I just pulled it, he defended. Woke up the next morning and it was still sore, so I leveled it up a bit. Since it's just a low pain, it's a grade 1. It's not Eve, of course it's not checked by a doctor. You were shot and just bandaged yourself up, Itsuka grumbled, folding her arms. Alright. I'm going to ignore that you didn't let anybody know, even Himiko or Tuya. And you're going to rest for the next few days until it's healed. Meaning you're walking with a crutch or a cane for the meantime. Office work only, and no late nights, alright? Neither of you are going to let me go until I agree, are you? Both shook their heads, smiling triumphantly. Alright. You two aren't on front duty until I'm done then. They froze, staring at him. You can't overpower your boss, ladies. Now you've got a choice here. Trash duty, paperwork or stocks. Pick your poison. Grinning nefariously he got up. Now, I've got to head to the other store to check up on a few things. Momo, can I please have a cane? The onyx-haired woman obliged, grumbling under her breath. Chin up, sweetie. You nearly had me there. Taking the walking stick, he picked up his cup in the other hand. I'll be back before it's dark. They walked to the door as a group, Momo pulling it open. Don't you worry about me. Someone has to, she smiled, kissing his cheek. Why not us? Izuku kissed the other side of his face. It wasn't until he'd left the cafe and was halfway to the exit of Ua before any of them realized what happened. 3 separate cries of shock disturbing the relative peace. Yo bossman, Koichi waved as he continued to clean dishes. Tuya's in the office, we got some new peeps looking for work. Natsuo was stood next to him, currently working machines, and Fuyumi and Kahuzo walked about the place, loading trays up into stacks with rubbish and cleanable cups on the top. Nakumo was all for hiring them, but Fubuki and Natsuharu recognized them both. Wanted to wait for you. On cue the Todorokis both turned to him. Boss, they're Yakuza, Natuso hissed, we can't. It's alright Natsuharu, if it's who I think it is, we'll be fine, he grinned, moving towards the office. Fuyumi stopped him. Izuku, they're part of A, so is my dad Fubuki, if he can jump ship not once, but twice, these guys can do it too. Her surprise let him walk to the office and open the door. Chisaki, Pops, welcome. The two turned in their chairs and nodded in greeting, and Tuya stood up out of his chair. The others wanted you to wait for my go-ahead? Why yeah, these two aren't incredibly prolific, but, well, it doesn't help that someone they knew got involved in a few cases here and there. Endeavor handled the Yakuza before? That was news. The former number 2 would never have dealt with something so clandestine. Well, it didn't matter anymore. I've retired from the Yakuza now. They let me go peacefully since I was in critical condition so long, Pop smiled. They let me out so I can care for him at all times, since I'm the only living family member, even through adoption. They wanted the best for the former Hisaki leader. Gone was Chisaki's plague doctor mask, instead replaced with a plain black surgical mask. I managed to finally enroll in an online course for my medical license too. Though my therapist is still helping me through my mysophobia for when I need to do practical lessons and exams. And you still want to work here while doing all that? I mean, why not? It'll kill some free time I have outside studying, Chisaki shrugged, and by the time the Yakuza find out, it'll be too late. Well, thanks to the Hisaki leader and second-in-command disappearing. The death of the clan is only so far away now, Pops nodded solemnly. I believe it'll only be a few years now before they completely dissolve. Izuku nodded and smiled. Well then, welcome to the group. Do you have a place to stay? If not, we'll have to rework a few rooms. Oh, don't warrant, just a few blocks away. Something the Yakuza don't know about. Chisaki waved a gloved hand. Pops is more than happy to just man the counter, and I'm good for anything really. Wonderful, give us a few days and Tuya will notify of your shifts. The pair nodded to him and stood up, shaking hands with him and Tuya before leaving. As they did, a boy with ridiculous eyelashes walked in looking around confused. Hi, excuse me? Is Itsuka Kendo here? No, she's at the other cafe at UA, what can I do for you? Oh, my name's Tetsu. Kendo told me about a job opportunity? Something about transferring money? Izuku beamed. Yes, wonderful, my name's Izuku Midoriya. I'm the owner and founder of Green Tea Coffee. We've been waiting on you, Mr. Tetsu. Leading him back towards the office, he grinned. You see, we've been relatively good going for a little over 2 years now, but we've been paying a third-party transfer company to do our cash deposits. I've been trying to find someone who can do that for us. As an employee, Itsuka told me about someone she knew with a quirk that turns their body metal. Why yeah, it's called steel, works off of how iron-heavy my diet is. Wonderful, this is perfect. Looking over to Tuya, the greenette lifted a thumb. Now, the job we're giving you is actually quite dangerous. You're basically given a box of notes. The physical income for the month. We need you to take it to the bank and deposit the cash into the cafe's account. Hopefully you won't look too suspicious, but we'll also equip you with a body cam as standard. Of course this is if you decide to take the job. If Kendo believes in me, I got it. Wonderful. Well, you're lucky we've been waiting for a man like you. Tetsu. Here's the route you'll be taking. I highly suggest memorizing it. You'll also be going to the UA branch. I have a pass organized for you. We just need a photograph for it. Email that to me as soon as you can. I'll get back to you when we're ready for you to start your fist shift, alright? You got it. He nodded with a wide grin, taking the folded map out of Izuku's hand and opening it up before marching his way out of the cafe. Izuku merely sighed and took his cane. Did you need me for anything else? No, we got everything handled. It's been running smoothly, so nothing to worry about. A dry cough. How's the leg? Grade 1 tear, nothing serious. I'll be back to it in a week or so. Itsuka knows apparently. You didn't know? She's been on our cases about looking out for you for ages. Really? He huffed indignantly. I suppose that I shouldn't be insulted by the fact no one told me? We all figured you knew? Tuya just shrugged. Oh, before you go, Mom wanted to meet you. To think you could? I'll go up now, but I told the girls I'd be back at UA for dark. Izuku lifted a hand. Haven't redesigned the back room, have you? Nope, Tuya chuckled as the greenette trundled into the staff door. I must say, you are younger than I thought you'd be, Mr. Midoriya. Izuku will do just fine, Mrs. Todoroki. Or would you prefer Miss Himura again? The mother froze at his words as she poured tea. They currently sat in her current, apartment. Just as quickly she got over her shock and shook her head. You really did do your research. I did nothing. Tuya did all the legwork. Well, him, Shoto and Natsuo, they weren't sure what Endeavor would have done to her if he'd found out. Shoto would have been trained harder and Natsuo could have easily just done another Tuya event. Izuku shrugged. All I did was make sure everything was ordered into a timeline and handed over to the right people. And you gave Tuya a home after he threw him out. Ray, he didn't just throw Tuya out. The world thinks he's dead right now. He spoke gently. What did they tell you occurred? That Tuya and Enji had a disagreement, which resulted in Tuya being thrown out of the house. Miss Himura, part of the house was burnt down. Tuya crashed on my balcony with his skin almost peeling off his body. It took days for him to recover from the burns in his muscles. Tuya nearly died because he fought back. She sat quietly contemplating his sentence. You seem calmer than I had expected. Honestly, it does not surprise me that things got that bad. My psychotic episode causing Shoto's scar was probably just the first crack before the glass castle broke. A wistful sigh. My parents are also being arrested for taking part in a quirk marriage. Natsuo told me. He shut the door on them when they tried visiting, hasn't unlocked it since. Shoto's had to come and go through the cafe. Well, once you have found your feet again, Miss Himura, you are more than welcome to come and dance with the family of green tea coffee, if you ever wish to dance again. I did wonder where Tuya picked his charm up from, she chuckled. You are a well-mannered young man, your parents must be proud. Yeah, I hope Mom is. Putting his cup down, he closed his eyes with a small smile. She died when I was 13, forced to work illegal hours after her employer illegally forced her to by cutting her pay. When word got out I was quirkless, I think my dad did it honestly. He disappeared a few days after I was diagnosed, so his approval is the last thing that matters to me. I don't care about him, where he is or how he's faring. Forgive my attitude, but if I find he's been dead under a bridge for the last decade, I shan't cry. I'm sorry if it's no harm, Miss Himura. Honestly, Tuya would tell you if you asked. He doesn't, out of respect for my privacy. But to go back a moment, I doubt you would want a middle-aged woman like me in this place. Miss Himura, if I may stop you just there, age, quirk, race, sex, sexuality and what have yous will never affect the offer of working in green tea coffee. Here we are a family, close-knit and reliant on each other. Once you are invited, it will always be open. Everyone here is here because I chose them for their character, because they want to make the world a better place, or they just want to help a single person every day. That's all. That is everything there is to working for my cafe. A small smile. I'd hardly call you middle-aged anyway. Your eldest are only what, 23? Making me 43, you charmer. She shook her head. He wasn't lying when he said learning your charm was easy, such silver-tongued skill. Miss Himura, I'm no silver-tongued snake. I simply mean as I say and say as I feel, and that aside, one of my newest hires is a grandfather content with working the counter alone. Wherever you wish to be, the cafe will work with it. If I may boast, my herbal brews were always popular before, well. It is no bother if you wish to not talk about it, Miss Himura, and I'm pretty sure that Fuyumi was talking to Tuya about getting a herbal tea mixer for the cafe. Perhaps a herbal corner would be better. Some partitioning and a small door. Tatami matting. Actually, he began rubbing his chin and she laughed again. My, thoughtful too, if Tuya's learned half your charm, ladies will be falling over themselves for him. You don't need to go to any lengths for me. Do not stretch to accommodate me, and please stop with the, Miss Ray will do just fine. I'm not stretching, am I, Ray? Honestly, this cafe will always be the first, so it will grow with the company and the family. In fact, I'm already talking to Tuya about buying the building next door to expand the cafe floor space anyway. Creating a relaxation room with a herbal tea counter would hardly be a Herculean task. Just talk to him about it when you're feeling up to it and we'll sort it all out. With a sip of his drink, Izuku smiled across the table. All you have to do is ask. This is the place, Mina? Are you sure? Yeah, obviously, Kiri. What other cafe is called Green Tea Coffee? I don't know, it seems pretty new, Izuku chuckled as he left the office. That's because it is, sir. Founded this place with my own ego now. Walking over to them, he offered the hand, not holding his cane, towards them. Izuku Midoriya. Eijiro Kirishima, a spiky redhead, shook his head vigorously. You founded this place? Super manly dude. You don't look much older than us. That's because I'm not Mr. Kirishima. I'm only 17. The cane is to help with a leg injury I sustained a few days ago. Dude, that's awesome. I'm Mina Ishido. Heard this place was so good Ua asked them to have a branch on campus. We do. I spoke with Nezu about it. It's a rather nice location. UA's not so bad either. He joked lightly. It's always full of hero hopefuls, including the staff. Many of them will be attempting the entrance exam. In fact, I believe all of them are. Without me, of course. Why not? I have a business to run, Miss Ishido. I'll be taking the business course in order to open up my humble services to licensed heroes. Really? That's manly. We're both aiming for the hero course too. Wonderful. I suppose I'll see you on campus at some point then? I dare say you've both got the perfect attitudes for it. They both smiled widely. They followed Izuku to the counter as he slid behind it. So what can I get some young heroes in training? A nice cappuccino for me and something calming for Mina, please. Coming right up, Mr. Kirishima, he nodded with a smile, ignoring the pout on Mina's face. Might I ask your quirks? Studying them has always been a pastime of mine. Oh really? Mine's hardening. I can harden my skin and make myself harder to break. My goal is to reach a state where I'm unbreakable so I can save anyone that needs help. Acid, I can secrete any acid from any point on my body. It can be anywhere from mildly irritating to burning through concrete. I want to learn to control it so well I can save everyone that's stuck anywhere. There's more to it than that, you know. What about the people that are hurt outside of fights? Suppose a small girl came to you because she was being abused? Or a man called for help while he was being kidnapped? They both paused and stared at him. There is more to heroes than their quirks, but it seems the media forget this a lot. What's your quirk, Mr. Midoriya? Just Izuku is enough, Mr. Kirishima. And I'm quirkless, have been since the day I was born. A small smile and a nod. Don't worry, it's not a big deal to me, not anymore, but please, don't gawk like I'm some zoo animal or exhibit at a gallery. Both of them shook their heads before smiling sheepishly. You won't often meet a quirkless because they're dead more often than not. Normally it's suicide before they get to my age, or it's old age because they were born in a more accepting generation, he mused, but anyway, that's enough bleak thinking for now, don't you think? He paused. I don't suppose you'd be looking for a job, would you, Mr. Kirishima? Well, simply, this cafe has a large amount of cash payments and we're currently on the lookout for people that would be suited to make the deposits at the bank for us. Save on hiring a third party to do it, the redhead nodded. And I believe your hardening would work perfectly for it. But I need to use it publicly, since you'd be working for us. It'd be a private use and we could always get the certificate for you as evidence. We did for our other security man. His quirk turns his body into a steel-like substance. With two indestructible men running the gauntlet, we wouldn't have to fear anything. Sure, yeah I can. Yeah, Kirishima grinned. I mean, the founder himself thinks I can do it. Why the hell shouldn't I try? Awesome, just head over to the office and talk to a guy named Akitani about it. Say I asked you directly and he should handle it from there. Hey, if Kiri's getting a job, I want one too. Are you quite sure about that, Miss Ishido? Anything I give you would be much less interesting. I don't mind, I want a job too, and asking you directly saves the job hunting. Quite right, he chuckled. Very well then, give me a few days to make a few calls. Would you be comfortable moving to work? Your housing would be provided by the cafe. Seriously, I get to move out and get a job? I'm all for it. Where would I be going? Oh, just some apartments above the other cafe, on UA grounds. You want me at the UA cafe? It surely wouldn't hurt, would it? Plus the apartments they've given us so far beat student accommodations by a long shot. A shrug. If you come back in a few days, I'll be in the office with Tuya and possibly Nezu so we can arrange for you to be given access to the grounds when you move in. Thank you. They both cried. Don't think twice about it. I'd be mad to not have two such upbeat individuals join my team. Plus showing off two more prospective students to Nezu would definitely make the cafe look better. So it's wins all around. Now I believe you guys have a lot to prepare for, especially you Miss Ishido. Mr. Kirishima, if you would prefer accommodation as well I can see what we can arrange. Kirishima saluted. Thank you Mr. Midoriya, we'll be off now. They took the to-go ups and dutifully began walking out of the cafe. Cheers of celebration heard as they wandered down the street. Izuku smiled and leant on the counter before grabbing his cane and walking out of the cafe. Taking a deep breath he smiled to the sunset. Things were going. Wait, sunset? Crap, he'd promised to be back before dark again. Shit. Power walking through the streets he made his way to UA. The fear of God in his heart. Really kid? You're going to pull this card? I'm a teacher for God's sake? Izuku grinned as he leant on the counter. Yes, but you're also a hero, a profession I'm not licensed to serve. Aizawa fumed silently. Hey, we never agreed this place could serve heroes. It's got a course of heroes, in training. They're still classified as students so long as they're here. Izuku interrupted as a purplet walked up to the counter. Can I get a hot chocolate please? Large with some marshmallows? Don't bother Nem, Aizawa huffed angrily, coming right up ma'am. Izuku bit a chuckle back as his face went stone. Anything else for you? No thanks Mr. Midoriya. Please Miss Kayama, it's just Izuku. None of that Mr. It's far too formal for me. He served the drink and dropped a handful of small marshmallows on the top. You were saying Aizawa? What the hell? He growled, holding Kayama hostage. You don't serve heroes? Izuku nodded slowly. Do you? Eraserhead. I want you to seriously look at Miss Kayama and please tell me what you see? My coworker, dressed in a baggy jumper and jeans, with her hide tied in a bun and red-rimmed glasses. Alright, now, can you please describe Midnight's hero uniform? A quick head shake. Never mind, I'll cut to the chase. Currently I'm not serving pro heroine Midnight, I'm serving UA teacher Nimori Kayama. Who's also Midnight, who's currently not on patrol or be recognizable as her hero persona. But he simply held up a hand and bowed his head, sighing before he spoke. Eraserhead, what do you teach in? A black jumpsuit. Alright, in your hero costume? A black jumpsuit? Do y'all see the problem yet, Eraserhead? His hands cupped air and moved close together before moving away as if the invisible objects were repelling each other. Do y'all? Aizawa stared silently, his eyes narrowing. It's part of why I can't serve Nezu until I get the license. He's just too recognizable. The same with Cementos, Ectoplasm, 13 and Hound Dog because they're too identifiable. Part of the law. If, say All Might walked into my cafe, as awesome as that'd be, I'd have to refuse him service because people would recognize him far too much. Lunch Rush doesn't really stop by to buy anything, so I can give him a drink during a meeting for recipes and collaborations. Even Hizashi changes when he does a lunch run for us. Kayama nodded. It's not much, letting his hair down, changing his jacket, taking his shades off. He simply gets nodded, like many heroes do on breaks and such, which is when they normally visit my cafes. Grabbing a cloth he began cleaning the counter. I don't know what you want from me, Eraserhead. You're the one wearing a crusty 3-day worn bodysuit in my establishment expecting service. Are you saying if I changed out of my clothes, you'd serve me? With that, he released his coworker and she walked towards a table, sitting down quietly to read a novel. So long as people can't recognize Eraserhead, I will happily serve Shota Aizawa. Does that make sense? Change of clothes. Maybe pull back the hair, don't have the yellow goggles on. I don't know why you lot teach in hero uniforms anyway. Because, we need to be ready for it, then just wear it under your clothes. Jesus, did none of you read a comic book growing up? A guy literally just tore his clothes off whenever his hero identity was needed. Another had nanomachines that created his costume. Some even had casual wear as their costumes for Pete's sake. "Sup, partner?" Izuku grinned. "Mr. Konishi. I've told ya, for just Makoto is fine, I'll get the usual please. One Americano extra sugar and cinnamon coming up." He chuckled, pushing the machines around. "You've gone for the same color scheme I see?" Unrecognizable, but an homage like always, Izuku turned around and put the drink down on the counter. "Thank you kindly." The till beeped as payment was taken before the hero walked back to the door, sitting in the seating area to soak up the sun. "Hey, can I get a McFuckin' one mocha frappe with a triple shot espresso on the way, Mr. Majima?" He shared a chuckle with the teacher. "And a white coffee with some cinnamon for your friend outside." Obviously he was talking about Cementos, who was currently stood outside the cafe waiting for the other teacher to get the drinks. "And some cookies on the house as standard thanks for, well, building the house." I'm not serving Cementos Eraserhead." Izuku shook his head with a wide smile. "Mr. Majima's put the order in and paid for it. How else would you be getting the drinks when the other staff does a coffee run, Wonderful as always, Izuku." Majima tapped his card to the reader and smiled when the satisfying beep sounded, signaling him to pick up the 2 steaming cups and Platex-wrapped snacks and walk outside. "Now, Eraserhead, there's an emergency changing room in the back if you have some spare clothes, but if not, well," shrugging with an apologetic smile. He shook his hands. "I'm afraid I can't serve you." The shit-eating grin on his face contradicted his sorry words. Both knew he was enjoying taking the subtle revenge on the teacher. Said man grumbled rather aggressively before closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. "Very well, I'll be back." "Sure you will, Terminator, sure you will." Izuku nodded tiredly. "Now are you going to actually leave, or are you going to glower at me for a few minutes? Because if you are, can you please move out of the way of the line? I have actual customers to serve." Izuku cleared his throat as he sat down in the staff room of UA. Nezu sat at the head of the table, grinning wildly, which made many of the teachers concerned. Of course they'd already greeted the Greenette rather warmly, and more than one agreed to visit the cafe for a chat at some point. Aizawa, as standard, was giving his signature glare to Izuku as he entered the room. Not that I'm one to question your authority, Nezu, but, why am I here? I'm just the owner of the cafe on site." "Actually, Izuku, our meeting is about you and how we need to adjust going forwards with your time here at UA. Oh, you've already exhibited perfect understanding of the laws and order of running a business. You've got nothing but stellar reviews, and many of your workers admit you helped them in a time of need. And, had you not been there, a time when they could have begun to tread down the wrong path. In fact, you've saved a pair from that path already with the likes of Chisaki and the man you referred to as Pops. Not only that, but you've also put yourself and your company at risk by helping the Todorokis in their time of need, while also being of the many that supports Endeavor's incarceration, which at this time the trial is still ongoing." Many huffed at that. The ex-hero was dead to rights, but he did have some very clever lawyers. "It would be crude to put you on the business course when you clearly are already aware of what you need to do and what you are already doing. If not for some rather irritating red tape, I'd see it fit to just hand you your license to serve heroes right now." Izuku balked as Nezu chuckled. "But that's not the only reason we wish to discuss what's going on, is it, Jade?" "I don't know what you're talking about, Nezu. Jade is a vigilante. I've got a business to run. I don't have time to be gallivanting around the city at night or day." Lifting his hands, he smiled. "If I were Jade, I'd be working alone. But I'm not Jade. I'm a busy man after all, Nezu." A line of reasoning most would buy. "But pray tell, Izuku, how did you injure your leg a few days ago?" "I fell off a ladder at work, helping to organize stock just after closing time. Upon hitting the floor, I fell into a roll to try and reduce the damage. It's not my first time falling after all." A shrug. "But in doing so, I gave myself a grade 1 tear in the mucle around my thigh. Momo and Itsuka insisted I walk with the cane while my leg recovers. Solid alibi, because it's fact. I hurt my leg falling wrong." "Yes, but I saw Jade land." Aizawa sat up straighter, smirking dangerously, and he cursed rather loudly. So loudly, in fact, the modulator didn't manage to hide his voice. "Congratulations. Then why are you accusing me? If you have the man's voice, you should be able to figure out who he is." Izuku hadn't sworn that night. In fact, he hadn't swore at all that day. It had been a good day. Nice customers, manageable traffic, no paperwork and no organized crime to dismantle. Just a few thugs needing a lesson. Seeing right through their bluff, he acted indifferent, because truly, he wasn't scared. A rather poor bluff there, Aizawa, Nezu sighed. We all know had you heard his voice clear enough to place him, you would have gone gunning for Izuku by now. Then, however, the fact remains our security does pick up you occasionally leaving late at night. Tuya used to have night terrors when he first moved in with me. Himiko and I comforted him. Now that there's 4 people in the apartment suffering from them, they require an extra hand to help calm them down. So Tuya calls me and I make my way over in order to help. I come back because I know people would panic if I were to simply disappear in the night. Everything was rehearsed. Izuku knew to never go anywhere without enough evidence to back him up. The others all knew the right words to say as well. Itsuka and Momo could cover his injury and Tuya would immediately have his back no matter what bullshit he spun for Nezu. It takes a lot of time for them to heal, as I'm sure it did you, Nezu. Everyone else froze before looking to the principal, who merely sat quietly and thought for several seconds. And how did you arrive to that conclusion, Izuku? Same way anyone else would. The paranoia you hold belays issues with trust. The fact you walk quickly shows your aversion to crowds and loud noises. Your keen intellect and your desire to know highlights your fear of not being in control. Throw it all together and you get trauma, and that changes a person, Nezu, even you. Very keen eye, Izuku. Now, can we cease this charade and can you just admit you are Jade? Okay, I'll humor you. If I'm Jade, why would I confess now? Surrounded by heroes, on the campus of one of the top hero school worldwide. There's literally no escape and no way out without handcuffs, so even if I was Jade, why would I admit to it? Leaning back in his seat, Izuku shook his head. Either way you've lucked out because I'm not Jade. I've got a business to run, schedules to handle and staff to manage. I don't have time to be Jade. Izuku, Nezu sighed, we aren't looking to arrest you. We aren't? Aizawa sat up suddenly, leaning on the table. No, we're not. Your petty squabble with him is your own business. No, Izuku. There's several things we wish to happen while you are here at UA. We want you to be an assistant teacher for the business course. After all, you are quite literally one of the youngest founders ever. To keep a successful business going, we want you to learn how to really be a hero, because you're already getting experience in the field, and I want you to be my personal student. No, Aizawa stood up. Nezu, no, that's not, no, anyone but him. Why? Because, it's still buttered about it, or you, Razor. Izuku folded his arms and sighed. Alright, look, I'll admit, I'm Jade. I go out every few nights on a patrol of the city and take apart what heroes are too busy to handle. Small drug rings, shadowy operations, but it's not vigilantism. Nezu smirked knowingly. There has been no quirk usage on my patrols, not once. It's always equipment, so it's more civil service. Aizawa just gaped. You, what, Razor? Upset a kid who owns his own business knows more about the law than you do? Or are you angry this quirkless kid dare do things better than you? He eyes burnt with green fire. I can lie straight to your face. In fact, I just did, because I don't do anything without backup. A story, contingencies. I could have walked out of this meeting and none of you would have known I'm Jade. In case you haven't noticed, your laws don't exactly apply that well to me. It's all, quirk this, and quirk that. So your little idea of slapping some cuffs and walking me to the station because you got hurt after insulting me and my ideals, will fall apart faster than a granola bar. Standing up and leaning on the table, he grinned. So go ahead, Razor, try me. I'm a legal anomaly. You can't lock me up for anything short of first-degree murder. He's right, Aizawa. Nezu spoke quietly as the two men stared each other down over the table. While technically he's been doing the job of a hero without a license, through his method and technicalities, he's absolved and innocent of any crimes. He wins on a technicality. The best kind of victory, Izuku smirked proudly. That being said, you still just admitted to lying to a group of heroes. Your teachers while on school grounds, students lie to you all the time. As far as we go, I'm a business partner, I don't need to be 100% honest with you. However, the Todoroki's suffering night terrors is not a lie. I just go for a walk when I'm done helping them. Izuku shrugged. And I do come back because the others would be concerned if I didn't appear in the mornings. I live with people who don't know after all. So you want me to be your personal student? What does that mean? You'll be in hero lessons and helping with the business course. Otherwise you'll be in here showing me the true scope of your abilities or managing your cafe and caring for your dot just yet. I have to wait until I'm 18 to really adopt her. Right now I'm just a carer, Izuku shrugged. But I'd be able to manage my cafe still? Naturally, you'd also have the business students you teach scrambling to be employed there and get practical experience, which you have in spades on both sides, hero and business. Izuku nodded at Nezu's explanation. Of course we don't have to do that and you can just be part of the business course while managing your cafe. It is your choice, Izuku. I'll take your offer, Nezu. It's the opportunity of a lifetime, so I will take it, gratefully. Which exam will I be taking? None of them, it's a different exam to the others. One you're already passing, however you are free to go and watch your friends and employees take their tests. Oh, actually that reminds me, Mr. Sakijiro, have you met Himiko Toga yet? She has a blood-related quirk as well and I believe she would greatly appreciate a role model that uses a quirk like hers. Yes, I have met her and I will be putting her forward to the recommended exam when the time comes. Eraserhead, have I introduced you to Hitoshi Shinso? He would benefit from a hero, such as yourself encouraging him. He still doubts his brainwashing quirk can be used for heroics due to a troubled background. Aizawa stiffened. No you haven't. Should I be concerned? Izuku waved a hand. Not unless you're concerned by the other employees and customers I served that had hard lives before they got the job with green tea coffee. As he is now, he's stable and confident, but he has lingering doubts. I'll come by later today, thank you. Oh, so you can act civil? Shut it, Mike, Yamada, please. The blonde nearly jumped from his chair as both faced him with annoyance and disappointment respectively. Well, I suppose that is everything then. Next year you'll be notified if you passed the exam or not along with the others. I hope you realize your knowledge of my outings does not stop them? Actually, Izuku, we knew you'd keep it up, so, you went to the meeting this morning? Yes, and Nezu wanted you to be his student when we start university. Yes, which means you're taking a different exam to all of us that's already started. Correct, and you spoke to the heroes about what happens when we apply. Again, correct, so you get to watch us all take the exams? At least the physical part, yes, and you know Himi is going to be taking the recommended exam courtesy of Vlad King? Izuku sighed and put one hand to his forehead. Hitoshi, for the love of all that's holy, yes, I am testing to be if I can be Nezu's personal student. I asked Eraserhead to meet you so he could help you soothe your worries about your quirk being heroic. Himiko is already doing brilliantly thanks to Vlad King and the only way is up for her, meaning the same for you. They are aware of my identity as Jade but do not want me to stop, instead encouraging me to keep going. Since I'm a legal gray zone and technically not a vigilante, they also want me on as an assistant teacher for the business course, since I'm somewhat of a prodigy. He rubbed his temples as he closed his eyes. Any more questions? Izu, calm down a bit, we're just shocked is all. Itsuka shook her head. Wait, you're Jade? Everyone paused. Yes, Mina, I am Jade. I see no reason to withhold it from any of you anymore since Ua knows and that's mainly what I was trying to avoid. Again, in case you're worried, I can't be arrested due to my quirklessness preventing me from being labeled a vigilante. And currently they believe you are all unawares anyway, even if that could get you in trouble. But you told Nezu, I lied. You know, like a liar, he smirked. Now that's dealt with, can someone please prep the table? Already done, Izuku. Momo smiled. Hitoshi set it up. Wonderful, thank you. Jiroda, could you help me take it all tea? Ah, no, Shoji interrupted. Sorry boss, but Itsuka and Yaomomo told us about your injury, not letting you carry anything except yourself to the table. The multi-armed team created various hands and began lifting up the bowls to the circular table they began gathering around. It's only Katsuden tonight, he sighed, rubbing the back of his head. Sorry guys. Don't be Izuku. Your Katsuden is the best, Himiko cheered with a wide grin, throwing her arms up the accentuator point. Slowly he eased himself into a seat between Momo and Itsuka, Hitoshi sitting on Momo's other side with Himiko next to him. Continuing around the table was Jiroda and Komori, Yatsetsu between her and Shoji, then Kirishima who'd just moved in beside, Tetsutestu who'd moved in yesterday and was more than happy to bunk with Kirishima in a room in the same apartment as Shoji and Yatsetsu. Aider Tetsu was Mina who'd moved in the same day as Kirishima, bunking with the other girls and cramming 4 people into the bedroom. Next to her was Eri, who obviously sat in a high chair and had her own small serving of Katsuden, occasionally getting help from Itsuka to many giggles of delight. Dude, you're so manly, Kirishima grinned a, literally, sharp smile. Setting up your own cafe and being a vigilante, bro, that is awesome. It's moronic, Momo growled, he hasn't gone to the hospital once. Hey, no, I went that one time. Really, when? Itsuka calmly spoke before taking a mouthful of katsudon. Oh, don't you start, I'll have you know I handle myself perfectly well, thank you very much. You got shot on your third night out, the greenette winced at the rebuttal, and I believe you became so delirious from blood loss that you flipped off a toilet for 3 minutes and… What was it you said to me? Momo, that you weren't afraid of death, or was it? Stop, oh, that's right. Your words were I'd rather curl up and die than crawl for help. That was it, right? And your response was, and I quote, he closed his mouth, oh, yeah, slapping me in the face and avoiding me for a day. Alright, in hindsight it was a bad way to handle the situation, but I don't like the people I care about talking about how easily their life could be thrown away. Midori, were you bullied? Mina leant forwards from her seat. Yes, there were exceptions, but the main rule was pick on the quirkless freak. The main one was Katsuki Bakugo, a friend and loyal customer of the cafe. He smiled softly. Along with Kaneki and Subara. The four of us were thick as thieves in high school. Up until then it had just been me and Katz. Well, you have all of us now, man. Tetsu grinned, lifting a fist in a classic weightlifting style and planting the other hand on his bicep. For real, none of us would be here without you. I doubt any of the staff at Green Tea Coffee would be the same without you leading the charge, dude. Yatsetsu lifted a thumb and grinned. You've had our backs for long enough, let us have yours. You guys do know that years of psychological abuse aren't undone by some moving expressions of support, right? I'm touched at your kindness, honestly I am. But it took me a year to see any value in my own life. Even the small bit I do admit, what happened is going to take several years to undo. But we've made a start, haven't we? Momo nudged him. Yeah, I guess we have, he admitted with a fond smile. Thank you all for being here. We wouldn't if you hadn't seen our worth, Midori, Mina smiled softly, so it's only right you let us show you yours. You know, that doesn't sound too bad, Mina. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Humming lightly to himself, Izuku walking under the sun to the street-side cafe. Katsuki had called for a catch-up and the two agreed to meet. Yeah, Izuku saw him every day at school. But managing the logistics of two cafes alongside the upkeep of his grades took most of his free time up. Behind him, he knew Tetsu and Kirishima Eijiro, as he insisted after dinner those couple nights ago, were walking with their quirks up and ID badges around their necks for when police met with the Ikates hadn't been difficult, and after the first run-in with some officers. The route now had several check-in points since both boys were underage at the moment and using their quirks. Seeing a familiar blonde hairdo, he waved to the approaching Katsuki. Dude, he grinned as they clasped hands and hugged. It's been ages since we've been able to just chat. I know, Dekiru, you're always crunching those number sheets during recess and lunch. Hey, it's hard running a cafe when you're practically halfway across the city. Just let Akitani handle it. When he doesn't call me for help because he missed a number and is panicking about bankrupting me, I'll consider it. Plus we are going to be expanding this place. Izuku opened the door. Ray's asked if she can have a relaxation corner that specializes in herbal brews. When we expand, we're making a relaxation room special for university students to de-stress with some herbal teas and incense. Alabama? No, Katsuki. Not incest. Incense. INCENSE. Calm down, dude. What are you doing, step bro? Katsuki faked a high-pitched voice. No, we're not related by blood or anything. It changed to a typical jocular low tone. Stop it, I mean burning candles, not whatever porn you're clearly into. Don't hate cause you don't get memes, dude. I don't have time for you memes. I'm a busy man running a business. An evil smirk. Gotta get stonks somehow. You sly bastard. They got to the counter. Hey Akitani, we'll take one good ol' Americano and a triple shot mocha with all the bells and whistles for boss and boss man's brother, coming right up. Tuya grinned as he got to work. Do you guys want to find a table and I'll have Koichi run it to ya? Pop stood nearby cleaning some cups with a damp rag, an idle SMLIE playing on his face. Thanks Akitani. Izuku lifted a hand. We'll be in the booths. They walked away and slid into a booth near his office. So, how's Uncle Masaru and Auntie Mitsuki? So, I mean, we're still living comfortably and Dad's not deaf, so. Life's good? Life's good, Katsuki nodded gently. But you man? I still can't believe it. A cafe on UA grounds? That's gotta be a first for the history books. Yeah? Not to mention I'm getting to know so many of the teachers. Did you know Eraserhead works there? No way. Dude, that's fucking sick, man. Who else? I know Midnight and Present Mike are there. Vlad King's there, 13 handles the USJ, Powerloader does the maintenance and support course, they got Hound Dog as the on-site therapist. Yes, I've been talking to him every other week. No, it's not been horrible. Yes, you told me so. I fucking didn't I? Midori, Katsuki? Oh my god, what are the chances? They both looked over to see Kaneki next to a girl. She had short blue hair that covered one eye and was just a few inches shorter than him. Fingers? Who's the chick? Oh, this, is Asuka Kirishima, my girlfriend. Izuku smiled and quickly stood up, sitting beside Katsuki. Join us. He gestured to the now empty bench, which Kaneki and Tuka quickly slid into. So, how'd you guys meet? What's the story? Actually, we met here, just a couple months ago, Kaneki chuckled, rubbing the back of his head. You were in the office for the day. Something about balance sheets and Yaomomo not letting you escape them again? He nodded in understanding. Yeah, he'd had a wound to his arm that was obvious by how he moved, so Momo forced him to remain out of sight for the day in case someone got an idea in their head. But yeah, we ended up really hitting it off. We met up a week later to head to an arcade, but after a few games we both decided it wasn't for us and both tried to surprise the other. A chuckle. We ended up thinking of the same place. Luckily I wanted to surprise her first. Fingers you can read? Katsuki? I read a lot. It's just textbooks I can't handle. Come on man, Izuku laughed. Yeah, you had the menu down pat after your first 5 visits. You had limited range back then, not any of this mocha frappuccino extra whipped chocolate sprinkles and unicorn shavings crap. The four laughed together for a brief moment. But yeah, we've only been together a few months but it's been pretty incredible. Izuku nudged Katsuki before he could mockingly gag as the couple smiled to each other and obviously held hands just below the table. Well, I'm glad you're happy Kaneki, after Subara went missing. Don't, Katsuki warned, don't talk about him like he's dead. Kats, he's not dead Dekiru and you know it too, we just got. Cuz? They all started at the voice before Izuku looked to his side, to see. Eijiro? Tuka stood up, Izuku smacked his head. Duh, I'm an idiot. Course you guys would be related, small world. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? What are you doing here? Perhaps I can explain everything? Izuku offered. Tuka, Eijiro and Tetsu here work as the deposit runners for the restaurant. Thanks to their quirks allowing them higher than average durability they were perfectly suited for it. Eijiro, from what I can gather, your cousin is here on a date with my friend, Kaneki, when he happened to run into myself and Katsuki Bakugo. They're the exceptions I told you about a few nights ago. No way, it's awesome to meet you guys. Eijiro bowed and offered his hand. Kaneki was it? Take care of my cousin, she's had a few rough relationships before. I understand Eijiro, but I've already promised your uncle to take care of her like no other. Say, Midoriya, Izuku is fine Tuka. What exactly is your role here? Kaneki tells me you work in the office a lot, and you know Eijiro runs the money. So are you like the accountant? The 5 guys around her laughed lightly. What? Tuka, my name is Izuku Midoriya, you know, like Midori, green? He pointed to his hair. I'm the founder, owner and current head of Green Tea Coffee. Everyone that works here I hired myself, which reminds me, Chisaki should be doing the handoff today. He'll have the key disassembled in his pocket, so don't worry about him taking a while. Kirishima and Tetsu nodded. You're the owner? Wow, you're younger than you thought? Yeah, no offense. None taken Tuka. I did start this place when I was 15 so it's not like no one else thinks I'm 20-something. But anyways. Koichi arrived carrying 2 drinks on a black tray. Koichi. Sup boss dude, Katsuki, Knuckles, Fresh Blood 1, Fresh Blood 2. Hey Koichi, Kaneki lifted a hand. Slip and slide, Katsuki flicked his chin. Hi Koichi, Tetsu and Kirishima grinned. We got 2 regulars right here. Did you and your lady friend order anything Knuckles? Not yet Koichi, we'll let Akitani know when we're ready. Izuku shook his head. No Kaneki, that simply won't do. Grinning madly he turned to Koichi. I don't suppose you can let Akitani know to make 2 house specials. All the bells and whistles, on the house for our loyal customer and his lovely date? Why, you don't have to, I'll get right on that. Koichi snickered as he walked back to the counter, Tuya laughing lightly as he explained the situation, before the order was relayed to Pops, who was now manning the majority of the machines. Midori, I can, Kaneki, brother, you know a single order won't break the bank. Can verify, we do make bank. Eijiro nodded, not at liberty to say more, but speaking of cash, it's about time we began moving some, don't you think, Tetsu? Yup, Eiji, nice meeting you, boss man's friends. Eiji's cousin. The two walked over to the office with grins. Izuku, really? You have a loyalty card? Kaneki handed over their empty stamp pad. It was a gimmick he'd employed when the cafe first opened and kept it running since it helped encourage returning customers. 1 stamp per visit meant 6 visits, and the 7th was either free for a single drink or discounted for multiple. Much harder to fake than the stickers, and it did work for him. Kaneki had just gotten a new one from Tuya by the looks of part of it midway through before sliding it into his receipt. It could just be binned since the sales were recorded digitally anyway. Consider your drinks paid for. Why, you're sure about this? Kaneki, buddy, I wouldn't have done it if I weren't sure. Now once you get your drinks, go out and have some fun with your girlfriend. I hear there's a certain author doing some signings in the bookstore down the road. Kaneki's eyes widened slightly. And I know for a fact you carry that specific book with you at all times. You do love the series, in fact. Izuku slid some notes across the table, as an apology for interrupting your date. Midoriya, are you? This is very generous, you don't even know me that well. Tuka, it's just Izuku, and I don't need to, you know Kaneki. He's the second closest thing to a brother I have, next to Katsuki of course. The blonde nodding in victory at the statement. I've known him since we began high school. Plus look around, Tuka, it's not exactly like I'm strapped for cash. But you're not made of it either, Kaneki countered. True, but who else can say they have a site on UA campus? You seriously got that? Dude, I thought it was a myth, Tuka exclaimed. Midoriya, I know you have that location, but that doesn't mean you can just. Look, Kaneki, we make decent profit. Anything that doesn't get spent, goes into the cafe's account. At the end of each quarter, whatever is there goes into my account. No, I'm not rich enough to have a super yacht or a helicopter and my own mansion. But I can afford to give my friend a discount and some spare cash for a date. I accidentally interrupted. Koichi arrived with 2 paper-to-go cups on another tray. And we have our drinks for the lovebirds, he teased lightly, word to the wise. Give it 2 minutes for the cream to melt and sink in. Trust me, it's much better, and like that, he was gone, back to serving other customers. You don't have to take it if you really don't want to, Kaneki, but I want you to. So you two can go and have fun and enjoy yourselves. Don't expect another freebie though, just a discount for you, though if you're interested, this place could do with a few pairs of hands spare, and with everyone bunking around, there's a free apartment upstairs, Kaneki. I know your parents are on your back about moving out. Wait, what? Yeah, when I bought this place, I got the whole building, including the 3 apartments upstairs. We got a group in one. A couple and their buddy in the second, meaning there's a free 2 LDK upstairs. Of course you know how it works. Yup, Koichi and Kahuzo told me, no rent, no utilities, but it's docked from pay. Literally all the money they earn is their own. Set up that way cause it'd just generate a pointless money loop. Correct, Izuku nodded. Now if you want the job, you'll have to talk to Akitani when he's in the office, since he's manager of this branch, but he already likes you, dude, and I can't say much on bias. Thank you, Izuku. It's no problem, Kaneki. Now, go enjoy your date. The couple thanked him again before grabbing their drinks and saying goodbyes, eager to head to the bookstore. You just can't help yourself, can you? Katsuki tutted as Izuku moved back around to the other bench again. I'm just being helpful, a shrug, you know you've just become his personal hero. Well, I guess that's the first step in the right direction then, huh? The blonde paused before grinning. Alright, bastard, I see where this is going, let's go be heroes. Mumu, he groaned. Can you please come out now? You've been in there for hours. I need to pee. The bathroom door whirled open to reveal a tall ravenette fiercely matching his gaze. Then, she stopped his attempt to advance into the room. A heavy sigh. Right. Izu, not to sound like a broken wreck, but it's the recommended exams today and your parents put you forward. A slight eye roll. I get it, geez. Just cause the cafe doesn't have the street cred to do it. Momo smiled as she playfully swatted his arm. He of course dutifully feigned being actually hurt. I have to look good, there's going to be a bunch of pros there. She walked back to look in the mirror as she applied makeup. Quietly the greenette just grabbed the remover wipes and subtly swapped them out for her foundation. Still don't get that, but hey, your thoughts. However, I still don't know why you have to put on makeup to think you're gorgeous. You're just saying that. Nah. Standing behind her, a hand snaked around her waist. I'll have you know I think you're the most stunning when you're au natural. Izuku, if you've finished teasing our girlfriend, can you please let her get ready? Itsuka leant around the doorframe, smiling at the blushing Momo as Izuku rested his chin on her shoulder. Not that I disagree. Guys, please, Momo whined, lowering her arms for a moment. Unfortunately she missed the sudden gleam of mischief that flashed in her partner's eyes as Izuku wrapped his arms around her, binding her arms just below the elbows. Suka, now. The ginger dashed into the room, grabbing the remover wipes he'd left, quickly grabbing several out of the packet and undoing Momo's progress. Said woman sputtered as she squirmed. Guys, come on, I need to look my best, and you will, because your natural beauty is best, Izuku cried. This is for your own good, Momo. UNCLE, Toshi Papa and Mama are bullying Momo again. The cry of a small 5-year-old permeated the air. Shortly thereafter a purple-haired man peered around the door, preemptively pinching the bridge of his nose. Either let her do her makeup in peace, or get done in the next. A glance at a clock out of their sight. Minute, because we need to go. A blonde-haired woman appeared above his leaning figure, grinning madly. Come on guys, we don't want to be late. We'll be right there, Himiko. Promise. Izuku nodded. Suka and I just need to convince Momo she's perfect the way she is. The ravenette huffed some displaced hair from her face in defiance. Fine, but make it quick, Hitoshi grumbled before the duo disappeared around the doorway again. Momo just groaned again as Itsuka continued to clean her face. Why me? Because we love you and you deserve to shine with the radiant beauty we both know you have. Itsuka stopped momentarily to look her in the eyes before pecking her lips. You're going to do great, Zuku. She tilted her chin up. No lipstick, he nodded before resting his chin on Momo's shoulder again. I've told you before how wonderful we both find you, haven't I? Plus a fact, Nezu fucking adores you. Honestly, if I weren't here, he'd have you as his student. Now I know you're bullshitting me. Such profanity. Itsuka teased. From the heiress, it's unheard of. Simply scandalous, he nodded in mock agreement. Really? Because neither of you were saying anything about it last night? You weren't using profanity last night, Izuku countered, tightening his hold slightly. What did she say again, Suka? Oh, yes, more, God, yes, Itsuka fake panted, in a varying order of course. I think a, right there, was mixed in at some point too. Definitely heard our names in there at some point, our two? Most likely, Izuku nodded. Done. Momo was released, much to her relief as her hands flew up to cover her beet red face. I hate you both. No you don't, Izuku kissed the top of her head. You never kid, Itsuka kissed her exposed cheek. Alright, come on gorgeous, you have an exam to own. The two grabbed her wrists and began dragging Momo out of the bathroom. Eri, come on, Izuku called out, letting Momo go to crouch and scoop their adopted daughter up. Wanna go see Momo be a badass? Yeah. Eri cheered as she was lifted onto his shoulders. Let's go. Her small hands grabbed his hair as her legs tried to lock around his neck. Alright then, hold on, he cried, grabbing Momo's wrist again and dragging her behind his dash. Itsuka yelped as she was suddenly being pulled by Momo down the stairs. Eri cheered as she bounced on his shoulders. Meep meep. He called out as they drew closer to Hitoshi and Himiko. Y'all better hurry up. Both immediately began running next to him as Itsuka and Momo found their footing, keeping up with the greenette's mad dash. Izuku, why are we running? Because, we can't let Momo freeze from insecurity, plus I gotta pee and it's too late to turn back. Right, onwards then, Hitoshi cried as they continued to charge, ignoring Momo's groan of defeat. The observation room was a simple room, one glass walled to watch the field and many chairs in a rectangle facing it. Izuku and Itsuka had sat down next to each other and Eri perched on his lap, idly wagging her feet. So how long was the theoretical part again? The ginger leant over, putting her head on his shoulder. Not this long, he grumbled, it's been nearly an hour, they should be out here by now. On cue a rabble began forming at one side of the field. Izuku could see Hitoshi and Himiko keeping close to Momo, the two animatedly encouraging her. His eyes narrowed. Itsuka. She sat up straight. See him too? Monoma, she growled, little wet wipe needs an ass kicking. Unfortunately he'll run his mouth too much and either get his face caved in or supporters to inflate his ego. Sighing, he leant back his seat. They watched as Momo lined up with the first 6 runners. Beside her was a green-necked girl and a boy with a weird military-style shaven head. Izuku watched as the starting pistol fired and all 6 began charging forwards. Buzzkid must have a wind quirk as he was suddenly propelled by a small tornado around his shins and jettisoned forwards over the course. Momo had ducked low to avoid the most of the turbulence while the other competitors were swept backwards slightly. She's using rollerblades, he grinned as Itsuka laughed. Goddamn, they're inline too. How much balance does she have? They watched the Ravenet glide forwards quickly, reaching a climbing wall. Putting her hands down, she created a pull from each palm. As they hit the ground she was pushed up and over the wall. Luckily the course was elevated to the wall's level. As she skated onwards, pieces of a person began catching up. Izuku narrowed his eyes and nudged Itsuka, who nearly leant forwards. Both of them paused when they recognized the head of the greenet moving up the wall. Momo came to a ramp that took her back down to the regular level, into a pool of water. She hopped up and began sliding down a rail that had been installed for whatever reason, her back glowing to signal her quirk was in use. Looking to each other, Izuku and Itsuka were trying to figure out what she had planned. Swimming would take too long, wouldn't it? They watched her approach the end of the railing and leap forwards, trying to cover as much of the pool as possible. Go Moma! Eri cheered as a parachute jettisoned out of her back. Rolling in the air, she quickly strapped in and began gliding over the pool, neatly landing on the other side and unfastening the device. Izuku's eyes flicked back to the girl in chunks. The parts of her were now flying down the ramp, still gaining on Momo. The Ravenet however wasn't visibly concerned as she just kept skating forwards, her forearms glowing. Izuku balked as she pulled out some fireworks in metal rings with small handles on one side. Oh dear God, Itsuka whispered as Momo also made a lighter, igniting the fuses of the fireworks and gripping the holders in either hand. They watched in abject horror as the Ravenet by the explosives. Once she was over the finish line, she aimed and released them skywards, where they harmlessly exploded above the stadium. She gets that from you, you know. His head whipped back to face the ginger woman. What? I'm not wrong. With a teasing smile she kissed Izuku's cheek. Mr. Midoriya? They looked over to the door and saw Toshinori stood in the way. Might I have a word with you, in private? Yeah, sure, hang on. Lifting Eri off his lap, he planted her in his seat. Don't let anyone except Moma take this seat, alright Eri? Alright Papa. Eri saluted as he walked over to the blonde, disappearing from the room. Talk. They sat down at a table inside an unused locker room. If I don't like what I'm hearing, I'm leaving. Toshinori nodded in understanding. Young Izuku, as you know I am a teacher at UA, but I'm guessing you didn't know, I'm also All Might's liaison for the school. You see, he has suffered an injury, one that prevents him from being a hero at all hours of the day, and he is looking to find a successor too. No, Izuku repeated with more force. Do you not remember what I said when you first came into my cafe? All Might is a pillar, everyone depends on him, now. I like him, he's a good hero, for when he can be a hero if what you're telling me is true. But what he did is put a bottleneck on hero society. Everything remotely challenging is left solely to him. The other heroes can't work themselves anywhere near what I'd call hard. Sure HTEY do a good job, but when it comes down to it, they aren't helping in a situation that poses a challenge. Kamui Woods won't even try to help in a fire emergency. Death's Arms hardly does anything outside of combat, direct combat at that. Endeavor gave 5 different people different reasons for trauma because he became obsessed with surpassing All Might. He might not realize it, but people herald him as the god of heroes. Now, if what you're saying is true and he has an injury that persists to this day, what happens when some street thug lands a blow that makes him bleed? What happens when some backwater level 1 thug makes God bleed? People will stop believing his is so strong, Toshinori mumbled quietly. And what happens to the angels? They get forgotten, they get attacked. If All Might bleeds, heroes as a whole die, and that is a weight he willing took on himself, and God forbid he retires because that means he's not a god either. All Might has trapped himself in a role wherein he can't die, not to a villain, a natural disaster. Not even old age. People think All Might is always going to be there. Izuku folded his arms. And what happens when he's not? But he will be, is All Might's quirk godhood? No, because he's got a disabling wound already on him. Therefore no Toshinori Yagi. All Might will not always be there, because he is human as the rest of us. Symbol or no, one day All Might will die, and on that day society crumble because he's the only thing holding it together. All because he wanted to be a symbol. He was just doing, yes, that there, doing. He was doing, he wasn't thinking. Tell me, have you ever once asked him, what happens next? Next? When All Might retires, what happens then? His successor, oh, his successor, of course, because All Might's going to thrust the responsibility of keeping society together to a hero barely out of university. Yes, I can't possibly see how that would go wrong. Perhaps you are being a bit too harsh, Izuku. Maybe I am, maybe, and if I am, I'll hold my hands up and say sorry. But right now I'm being pragmatic. All Might is bearing the weight of society on his shoulders because he can't let anyone else do anything, and you're here telling me he wants to put that on the shoulders of someone barely beginning their hero career? Good grief, can you please ask him to think about consequences? Izuku sighed. Just, every action has knock-on effects. Look at me. My father abandoned me, which in turn led to my mother overworking and dying of overworking herself, which ended with me being given a lot of money. So I jump-started my dream and built a cafe, which led to us having this conversation right now, because of the effects my father being a coward. That's a very deterministic way of looking at things, that it was all caused by the one event. Oh, no, forgive me, I didn't mean for it to sound like that. Every action has several consequences, from something as little as a change in perception to things that I previously stated. Each action made in the present links to the actions made in the future. For example, Dad abandoning me led me here, to this conversation, but All Might getting hurt led you here, to find his successor, which he doesn't need, which the world would be better off without. That sounds quite harsh. Maybe it is Toshinori, but the world can't have just one pillar. The next generation have an impossible bar to meet, because All Might raised it so high, and when they failed to meet that bar, villains are going to get more confident, because they will meet that bar, because they need to be stronger to escape All Might, to win against All Might. So when the next generation isn't All Might, the next generation loses, exactly, and anyone his chooses as a successor will just be another All Might. Another singular pillar tasked with the monumental challenge of holding up society on their own, which nobody should have to do. And then the bar is raised even higher because the successor is the next All Might, stronger than the last, with the same mindset, his hand rolled, and on and on. The bar gets raised and the whole of society keeps resting on one person. Eventually it'd expand to the world depending on that singular person, and then what? What? When the world depends on one person and they get even a cut, let alone fail, what happens then? Anarchy, anarchy, he nodded, because if the world's best can still get sliced like the rest of us, what else can hurt them? A bullet, a laser, a rock. What? The world will fall because nobody will be strong enough, because everyone would be complacent. Izuku stood up and nodded. So, thank you for the offer, but no, I will not be All Might's successor, and if he has any understanding of what you've recorded, no one else will be either. Toshinori just smiled. I have a feeling he will. Izuku. Thank you for the conversation, it was eye-opening to say the least. My pleasure, thank you for listening. I suppose I should get back to the viewing room now. Good day, All Might. Good day, young Izu. The door closed as he left the number one hero frozen in shock. Had he really expected Izuku to believe that when he was meant to be studying under Nezu this year? The greenette could practically hear the chimeric cackling after he listened to the conversation. And who's the ginger wench? Izuku felt his anger flare as he heard a familiar nasal drawl. Re-entering the room, he quietly moved behind Monoma as he stood in front of his girlfriends. The chambermaid? Don't tell me he brought a Mist Urk. Now Monoma. Izuku gently clasped his hand around the back of Monoma's neck. You wouldn't be cursing in front of my adoptive daughter, would you? His voice a sickly sweet that could only indicate danger. The hand tightened. Or are you still insulting my girlfriends? Yes, plural, because yes, we in fact are together in a three-way relationship, and yes, the small white-haired girl is our daughter. Momoma's eyes tried to look at him as his mouth opened. Ah no, the grown-ups are talking. I want you to look at the room, really get a feel for it. You see these people, the Ingenium family, The Yaoyorozus, lovely to see you again by the way. Many pro-heroes that recommended the other applicants, but what's this? Only a representative of the Monoma Corporation. Not your parents, now we know they aren't dead because they covered up your little mishap wherein you're permanently banned from my cafes. Including the one on UA grounds. I want you to look really hard at those empty seats. Reserved for why would they be proud of how you're acting? A low growl, because if the answer is yes, I'd highly advise moving out before you get into the dorms and have your little world crash down around you. Not that I wouldn't enjoy the show, but I want you to really think about how you've just made your very first impression on a whole lot of people. By coming into this room, harassing a fellow examinee and the guest she brought to watch as well as the child with them, including some rather abhorrent language so casually and spitefully, so save yourself further humiliation and sit down. As his hand let go, Monoma whirled around to face him, red-faced with anger as Izuku stared on with a cold passiveness. I'm not afraid of you, Monoma. Sit down. Closing his mouth, the blonde wisely chose to move away, putting whatever righteous anger he felt into his movements. Izuku quickly sat down beside Momo, who had actually taken his seat. Don't listen to a word he said, all right? Immediately he began comforting her while she hugged Eri on her lap. Whatever he said, it was absolute drivel, all right? He called me a hussy. Said I probably slept with you for the recommendation because mom and dad kicked me out. Izuku found a fire in his gut burning as he did his best to hug Momo. Don't you listen to a word that ratbag uttered. You're too brilliant to let a cheating fraud like him get to you, all right? Every word he said is wrong to the fullest extent. Itsuka also hugged Momo. Don't you either, Suka. You're part of this relationship as much as either of us are, got that? She nodded, pouting slightly as her eyes watered. Eri, sweetie, can you please hug Mama and Moma for me real quick? Papa's gotta go do something real quick. Izuku, please. Momo grabbed his sleeve as he stood up. It's not. It is worth it, Momo, you're worth it. Gently taking her hand off him, he smiled. You're worth more than all of it, both of you are. Smiling softly, he walked down to Monoma's seat and stared at him with pure hatred for a second. What? Come to grow? He was shut up as his head slammed back into his seat from Izuku's blow before he found himself lifted slightly off the chair by the front of his shirt. Don't you ever, and I mean ever, talk to anyone I care about in that way again, because I don't care just who you think you are or who your parents are, or your teachers or your friends. There will be no force in existence that will protect you from me, am I clear? Monoma could only stare numbly at him. I asked you a question, you vazy wagtail. Maybe I should speak in a more ancient dialect so you can understand me. Do you Latin, or ancient Greek? No, I do. Again he was met with silence. God, are you trying to be this dumb or is it natural talent? I figured you'd be a jerk when I saw you walking into the arena, but man, you couldn't even meet my lowest expectations. Fingers snapped in his face. Hey, I'm still talking to you. Stay away from the people I care about or you won't live to regret it. We clear? See crystal, see clear. He was thrown back into his seat as Izuku marched back to his seat and sat down, mood changing immediately as he watched Hitoshi and Himiko begin their races. Opening the door, he was met by a particularly odd view. In Nezu's office, the principal was grinning with a predatory smile, but not to him, to the three guests in the office. Monoma and his parents, who were staring at him as if he'd personally, and Monoma himself grinning with a predatory smile. This one was aimed at him. Izuku, Nezu greeted calmly, the smile being hidden the moment the other three looked at him. Thank you for coming. No problem, Nezu. When I got your message I did wonder what you wanted to talk to me about. Yes, well, it appears as though Nato Monoma here and his parents wish to press charges for assaulting him during the recommended exams? Oh, you mean after he verbally harassed Momo Yaoyorozu and Itsuka Kendo and went on to try and threaten me when I told him to stop? Izuku folded his arms, or how his libel and false reviews on my cafe has reduced our income. Or after we discovered he had been stalking Momo to the point he came into the shop and harassed her in an attempt to publicly humiliate her? Because if we're going to talk damages, there's a lot more done to my side than his nose. Nezu smirked to him as the Monomas looked to each other, subtly panicking. Now I'm not normally one to do this, however, since you've deemed it worthy to go to my business partner to complain about how I work and try to press charges, I believe counter-suing is the choice I will be making. Izuku pulled out his phone. Luckily I don't go anywhere without evidence to back up transgressions against me. It was handed over to Nezu, who plugged a cable into it, attaching it to his computer. They watched as several screenshots and videos were pulled up. Now, I haven't been to the street-side cafe in a while. You know, busy managing the one that's on UA grounds. Smiling at how uncomfortable they looked, he continued. However, I still have access to the security system. Now, after his first transgression, which resulted in the permanent banning of Monoma from green tea coffee. We left his picture up with a do not serve notice, and if he were to start being uncooperative, the first instruction was to notify authorities to the issue. Let's just see how many times he's had to be escorted out of the cafe after I moved to the UA store, which is a year ago. I'd like to add. The pleasure of just how unsubtly he could tell them they were fucked alone made him feel the trip was worth it. A small collage of videos played showing the police entering the store or Monoma storming out as Tuya came out of the office. In the corner a small counter pinged with each shot change. Eventually the clips faded to black with the counter sliding into center screen and blinking several times. Oh, wow, 162. That's 3 times a week. Now onto the fake reviews. A bunch of fake accounts with 1-star reviews and slanderous and derogatory insults. Varying from Izuku's own quirklessness to Iguchi's mutation-type quirk and just insulting the rest of them however possible. That's a lot of quirkism, and is that some homophobia in there too? Ooh, where did you learn that big word Monoma? Or the bigotry in general? Wow, racism too? Ooh, things aren't looking good for you there buddy boy. Nezu was clearly having the time of his life as both of Monoma's parents paled. We withdraw that's all well and good, he clapped his hands together. But how are you going to be paying for the damages? I mean we haven't even gotten to the footage Nezu has of Monoma harassing Momo and her friend along with the child they had taken with them. Nezu hummed dangerously. The screen changed to black as he continued swiping through the phone. Yes I can see this is all quite a bit of slander and libel. Not to mention the harassment of his employees. Repeated trespassing. Monoma has racked up quite the tab here. In fact I dare say this evidence now disproves his own statement about the assault being unprovoked. You have quite the libel case here Izuku. I'm sure you don't need me to press charges for you do you? Not at all Nezu, I can handle this, will that be all? No actually, well, for the Monomas that is, good day, dismissing them with a causal wave. The rich family made their way slowly out of the room, pale-faced and panicked. No, there is someone here that wishes to meet you, or rather, meet you again. There was a knock at the door, come in. Izuku turned to it and gasped in shock. Chisaki? Sup bossman? Chisaki strode into the room, grinning from ear to ear. You're not. There's no mask. Nope. Misophobia all gone. Just a bit squeamish anymore. To prove his point, Chisaki pulled Izuku into a hug. And please, after all you've done for me and Pops, it's just Kai. Yes Chisaki here applied for a job at UA's nurse office, working alongside Recovery Girl. But that requires, Izuku paused, backing the man again. You got your medical license already? Dude that's amazing. I know right? Kai chuckled as they parted again. Once they found out my quirk, I just had to sit an exam to prove I know what I'm doing. All the practical stuff I can do with a finger, so I pretty much aced the entire course. That's fantastic man, honestly I'm proud of you. Of course my employment at Green Tea Coffee is still in effect, but I cleared it with Tuya. From now on I work weekends, taking care of trash and holding the safe key. Sod that, you, Pops and I are going for drinks Saturday night to celebrate, you got your medical license. He's already proven to be a major asset to UA, Toshinori, if you could please. The door opened again and Toshinori meekly walked into the room. Izuku paused before glancing at Kai, who seemed nervous and constantly looking over to Izuku. Now, we are all aware of the popular pastime of Toshinori aren't we? If you're referring to the fact he's All Might, then yes, we all are, he nodded, making Kai pause. It was an educated guess I made on the day of the recommended exams. After a brief conversation with him, I came to the conclusion and after throwing it out there, his reaction was all I needed. God you are, terrifyingly smart dude, yes, well, Mr. Chisaki's efforts have worked wonders for my form. All Might smiled with a thumbs up, thanks to him I am back to full health. I just structured some of his skin cells into the cells he needed for his internals. Nothing I can do about the muscle dystrophy though, that's all you big guy, All Might nodded. Honestly I am glad I am able to truly enjoy food again, he shrugged. As it stands I am announcing my reduction in hero work anyway. Izuku creased his brow. I need to slowly give the weight and responsibility back to the others. If I were to drop it suddenly, it would crush the next several generations of heroes, possibly destroying any desire to be part of the profession as the responsibility is too great and the bar to reach too high. And thanks to Chisaki's work, he no longer needs to search for a successor, so his legacy will remain his for a little longer yet. Nezu nodded gently. Your last conversation with him was the final nudge he needed to truly look at the bigger picture before him. As I have urged him many times before too. All Might chuckled sheepishly. Now, I do believe there is also something else to be discussed. Yes, there is. They looked to All Might, who suddenly became very nervous after his bold agreement. There is, if it wouldn't be a bother. Izuku took a moment to just absorb the picture of a fidgeting All Might, who seemed suddenly very nervous to talk to him. Closing his eyes for a moment to permanently commit the picture to memory, he smiled and nodded. If I'm understanding it right, you're asking for a secondary job down at Green Tea Coffee, aren't you? Yeah, he admitted lamely, I simply wish to broaden my horizons. As it is said, I am old Izuku, half a century almost. Toshinori Yagi wants to retire one day, and All Might will, one day, but until then, I plan to slowly allow the limelight to move off of me and onto the newer heroes, the stronger heroes. And using your depowered form, you wish to work at the cafe? Obviously I would work at the one of campus if possible, draw less attention and possibly throw people off from the connection to my two forms. Izuku grinned, tapping the side of his nose. Yagi Toshinori in the cafe, All Might at UA, I get it. Well, if that's the case, I can send an email to Tuya. In fact, I could probably just phone him while you're on your way there and explain it all. Obviously I'd have to explain your two forms, but nothing further than an injury, but afterwards it'd be a straight shot for the hiring process. I take it you wouldn't be moving into the apartments above the cafe? A shaken head. No, wonderful. In that case paying you would be much easier as there would be nothing deducted, much like Chisaki and Pops. You deduct their pay? Only those that live in the apartments of the cafe? I own them, so paying them only to pay the money back to me seems a tad redundant. We take out all the bills that would normally happen at the beginning of the month and subtract from their pay at the end of the previous month. Anything they get after that is theirs. There's also a pot every chips in to buy groceries. Again, only the apartments do that. Most of it is the former Todoroki family, now known as the Himura family after the divorce proceedings were finished. Which reminds me, Nezu, there's going to be a celebration this Sunday. You've been invited, along with Aizawa, Toshinori too. But All Might hasn't been involved in the case, hint hint. I'll be there, and from now on, it's just Toshinori. If I am to retire the mantle, I am to retire the name too. Toshinori nodded slowly, an aged smile on his face. Now I believe you have other things to attend to today? Such as checking your mail? You're right, Toshinori. Excuse me guys, I have to go. He quickly left the room and dashed to the cafe. Everyone was gathered around the table together, each holding an envelope. Eri obviously didn't have her own, as so was coloring in a picture book. Izuku's envelope sat on his placemat in front of his chair. Dropping into his seat, he picked it and looked at everyone. Remember, pass or fail. We all belong here at the cafe no matter what. If they fail you, it's their lose. Agreed. Everyone nodded in understanding before staring at the envelope in their hands. Alright, on 3, 1, 2, 3, everyone opened their envelope at the same time, small discs falling in front of them. For most of them a hologram of All Might flickered to life. Hitoshi's had Eraserhead. Himiko had Vlad King, while Momo and Izuku had Nezu. The principal was in hers since a third party, her family, had recommended her instead of a hero that worked in UA. All Might's message was heard over the other three messages since his voice overpowered the rest, and aside from names and placements, it was the same for all of them. Congratulations, Young. Your incredible show at the practical exam scored you points, and when combined with your written score of, you scored more than enough to earn your place on the hero course. Come, this will be your hero academia. All Might's teaching at UA, was the collective reaction. Everyone, except Momo, turned to face Izuku, who merely stared at the unpowered disc sat in front of him. He was probably the only person who'd heard Nezu talk and talk directly to him. Izuku, you did well. I think it's time you learned what your test actually was. Honestly, it wasn't even a test for you. Sticking to your ideals and fighting for them is second nature to you at this point. But your patience and willingness to talk has turned most if not all of UA's staff to your side. Your incredible compassion saved no less than a dozen people, including 2 former Hisaki heads. Your test was to see if you could be a good person, which you have excelled at, as both head of Green Tea Coffee and Jade. You pass with flying colors, Izuku, and it is truly going to be an honor to teach you. See you then. Oh, and don't forget, Powerloader has your costume ready. Might I suggest breaking it in before school? He'd stared at the hologram in white-knuckle shock, eyes trailing to the disc that had projected it. Momo's hand rested on his shoulder. Izu, it's okay, if Nezu didn't, I did it. His voice seemed too far away right now. I did it. A smile began forming as the reality set in. Oh my god, I did it. I'm Nezu's personal student, I did it. A look around the table, we all did it. Mina grinned playfully as she began repeatedly smacking her fists on the table. Soon everyone joined in and began chanting. We got in, 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 we got INNNNN. We got into UA. Everyone began celebrating. Komori pulled Jiroda into a kiss and the two fell into a chair. Togeli jumped Hitoshi, sending them crashing into the floor. Yatsetsu and Shoji had put an arms around the other's shoulder, grinning and celebrating together while Tetsu and Eijiro hugged and began cheering about, bro, and, manly. Izuku had stood up and swept Itsuka and Momo into a hug. Mina? He looked to the pinkette, who was just smiling in her seat. She looked over to the trio and smiled. You mind? Itsuka shook her head. You? Momo agreed with Itsuka. Alright, Mina. Get over here, celebrate with us. Her smile became a mile wide and a million watts as she threw herself into the group hug. We did it, they all cheered together, launching a celebration party that lasted the entire night and long into the next morning. Everyone Izuku had ever known was currently gathered in the living room of his first apartment. Several fold-out seats had been brought in or created. Momo got a special thank you gift for that coming her way. And the entire family, staff of Green Tea Coffee was there. Nezu, Aizawa and Toshinori also joined in, along with Katsuki, Kaneki and Tuka. The latter trio being brought up to speed when Izuku had dragged them upstairs after inviting them to the cafe randomly. The reason? A viewing party, watching the final judgment in the trial of one Enji Todoroki, better known as former number 2 hero Endeavor. The case had crawled along slowly for a year now, which hadn't done the hero any favors, giving the populace time to truly understand the severity of what he did. The entire hospital Ray had been trapped in was shut down since the majority of the staff had been aware of what he'd done and taken under the table payments. 3 different schools also suffered as they had simply ignored the child that had asked for help, but refused the next entry, so only the twins had family at school. No less than 5 governors were outed for corruption that tied them not only to Endeavor but also many other heroes, most of which were in the HSBC, bringing that under fire too. Half of the governors were also tied to the MLF, linking the entire case back to Izuku's own pair of cases involving the radicalist group. Many heroes had lost their licenses because of the singular incident, mainly those in the lower popularity ranking such as Slidengo. Izuku remembered how long Koichi had moped that such a diabolical person had a quirk similar to his. Endeavor's case had sent ripples across hero society. Some of his captures were even retried since it was possible they had forced or coerced confessions. In fact, many heroes in the HSBC were now having their captures retried with different officers. Those previously involved were now being investigated for corruption. The HSBC had all but dissolved, the president herself being arrested for several white-collar crimes and allowing heroes to do certain illegal things. Her case was entirely disconnected from Endeavor's for safety reasons, as no one was sure who would kill who if the two were to clash. Everyone was on the verge of their seats as they watched the judge. Izuku paused the TV as there was a knock at the door. Who's interrupting the good bit? Tuya grumbled as he continued to stuff his face with popcorn. Izuku waved him off and opened the door to the apartment. A familiar bunny hero stood at the door. I'm not late, am I, Rumi? Tuya stood up, nearly spilling his popcorn if not for Natsuo's fast reaction. You came? I thought. I took the day of special, but I needed you to think I was busy so I could go get this. A bottle of sake was produced from behind her back. Can I? Izuku moved out of the way and gestured. Thanks. He took the sake bottle, placing it in the alcohol cabinet of the kitchenette. Ray hadn't reorganized that much over the year. He returned to his seat to see that Rumi had sat on Tuya's lap, now sharing his popcorn. Deciding to question him later, Izuku continued the program. In the case of the Todoroki now Himura family against Enji Todoroki, we the jury find you guilty of all charges. Izuku hushed the room as they began to get exited. The judge did similar in the courtroom. Very well, Enji Todoroki. I sentence you to a multitude of life sentences in Tartarus. May you hope God saves your soul because no one else is going to. And with the clacking of the wooden gavel, the entire room turned into an enormous celebration. The new Himura family were all cheering and celebrating to various degrees, as was the green tea coffee family. The UA staff in the room, however, were more subdued. While yes, they were happy that such a criminal had been put away, they were also morose that the number 2 hero could get away with such atrocities for so long without the public ever learning of it. Nezu's conspiratorial eyes gleamed with malicious yet heroic intent. Maruko laughed as she was suddenly in Tuya's arms, the man standing to celebrate but careful to not drop her on the floor in his excitement. Izuku himself cheered with his older pseudo-brother along with the rest of the Himura family. Finally he's gone. Shoto dropped himself back into his seat as the cheering died down slightly. We can go back to our names. I'll get the badges printed out for you all, unless you don't. Izuku, if you think we're going to leave just because he's been locked up for good, then you've got another thing coming, Natsuo argued, shaking his head. We just want our names back. Just because you helped us finally get him done you think we're up and out? Nah man, if it weren't for you, we wouldn't have Tuya back, or mom for that matter. We owe you a lot Izuku. Fuyumi nodded gently. Endeavor's incarceration isn't the end of our story, you know, and to be honest, working here has been so much more relaxing than anywhere else. You took us in when we didn't have many places to turn to. Obviously we're here for the long haul from now on. I mean, you did kind of forcefully adopt us into the family here, he chuckled. Please, you should have seen him with the first group. Himiko laughed. Honestly, practically forced Tuya and I to move in. Then Koichi and the others weren't given much choice either. Helaguchi was hired specifically so Izuku could order him not to die from the wounds he found him with. I remember it well despite the concussion. The lizard man shook his head. Welcome to green tea coffee. You start immediately. First task, don't die on me. And you've yet to fail that task, Aguchi. Izuku nodded. Like I could die on you after all you've done to help me. The room descended into different conversations as people formed little groupings. Izuku noted how Maruko and Tuya remained close while Chisaki broke the mold and began sheepishly talking to Fuyumi. With a small sigh he smiled fondly at the company around him, easily falling into conversation with Katsuki and Kaneki. Life was good. I still don't get it, he grumbled as they walked under the sunlight. Why Nezu has me go to 1A's homeroom if I'm going to be his student? It's probably just a formality so they can keep track of your attendance. Momo smiled to him as she held his left hand. What sucks is that Itsu isn't in 1A with us. Yeah, but I'm not alone in 1B though, am I? Jirota, Komori, Himiko, Yatsetsu and Testutsu are with me. Itsuka shrugged as she held onto Izuku's right hand. True, Mina, Eijiro, Shoji, Shoto and Hitoshi are with us. So we're even spread between the homerooms I guess, and you guys are split nicely between classes. I think it's to prevent any animosity between them. He shrugged. Sound like something Nezu would do. I might not have a desk for homeroom though. That's fine, you can always share with me. Momo giggled, nudging his side. The trio walked down the pathway from the cafe to the main building. Izuku had walked the path many times, yet now he found himself walking it with a different stride. He no longer wore the lanyard around his neck identifying him as the cafe owner. No, he wore one now that identified him as Nezu's student, meaning he could take the business class when assigned to them or otherwise take part in hero lessons, and homeroom apparently. As they entered the building, they each found the locker to change out their shoes. Once they were done, they began escorting inside one of the 4 interconnected towers that made UA. Luckily both classrooms were next to each other so it wasn't like Itsuka had to walk on her own for long. As they approached the classrooms, the trio slowed down a little. Hey, alright, despite himself, Izuku's voice shook with nerves. I guess this is it, our first day as hero students. Let's do our best. Itsuka squeezed his hand before letting go and walking past the 1A door and standing before the 1B door. Izuku closed his eyes and took a deep breath, opening the door. Shoji, Hitoshi, Eijiro, him. Shoto was busy with his head in a book and Katsuki stared in mild shock. "You sly bastard," he got out of his seat, where a tall brunette had been scolding him for putting his feet on the desk. "You actually did it. I got concerned when I didn't see you at the exams." The two men embraced. "I had a different exam. Recommendation? No, actually, Nezu's test. I'm his personal student. Being here for homeroom is a formality from what we can guess." "Hey Ponytail, been a while. Yes, I don't think I've seen you since the ending of the trial. Good to see you've kept up the hard work." "Nothing like he has though. You were involved in a trial?" The brunette boy hollered. "How on?" "Cool your jets there buddy." Izuku furrowed his brow. "Geez, no wonder your legs are so massive since you jumped to conclusions so much." The man's jaw dropped. "We were watching Endeavor's trial because a close personal friend of ours had a stake in it." He frowned, anticipating the next words out of his mouth. "No, we aren't telling you their name because we respect their privacy, and no, you aren't forgiven for jumping to conclusions either." "Oh, it's you," a voice from the doorway spoke, "the explosion boy." Izuku turned to see a brunette with bangs either side of her face smiling at Katsuki. "You're the one that saved me." "He?" Izuku pointed to his blonde friend. "Saved you? When? How? Why?" With mock suspicion he turned to Katsuki and clutched his shirt. "Who are you and what did you do with the real Katsuki?" "Chilled Dekiru. Yeah, I saved her, at the entrance exams. Dumbass got herself trapped under rubble, so I knocked some off and got her to safety. Missed out on fighting the zero-pointer, but I still beat the exam in the end, so, he explained as Izuku let him go, both men grinning. "So extra, what's your name?" "Ochako Uraraka. Thank you for saving me." "Katsuki Bakugo." Green is Izuku Midoriya. Ponytail is Momo Yaoyorozu. Both of whom stepped away from him and narrowed their eyes. "Imposter, hey, I do remember names. I just choose not to use them." Katsuki pouted. "I do listen, you know." The group began to find their seats. Izuku high-fived Hitoshi, who was sat behind Katsuki against the far window. A purpleette behind him was of shorter stature but still near average height. Momo sat behind them and her seat was oddly sized to fit two people side by side without being cramped. Sliding in next to her, he grinned and gently clasped her hand under the desk, letting her lean her head on his shoulder. As he began casual conversation with Shoto, who'd been sat next to them, a familiar voice rose up. "Midoriya? Is that you, Tokiyami?" In front of the bicolored teen was the avian-headed boy Izuku had met as a teen. "Oh dude, how are you?" "Midoriya." A voice came from Todoroki's other side as a head leant forwards towards the desk. "Koda?" Shoto leant backwards to allow him to see the other man clearly. "You both got into 1A? Oh my god, what are the odds?" A crumpled note dinged his forehead and landed on his desk. Looking for the origin, he saw Shoji giving a small wave, clearly smiling under his mask. "That is amazing. God, it works out perfectly. You had to come and see the cafe." "Your cafe is doing well then?" "More than that. We've got a shop on campus," he whispered secretly. "Since I'm Nezu's student, I get to teach the business course as a sort of prodigy example. The teachers have already gotten requests to see if I can hire half the class for practical work. We should head there after orientation and I'll show you guys the new digs." "It has been a while since we visited your establishment." Tokiyami nodded. "Is the street store doing well?" "Yeah, we're expanding it now. Is Tuya handling it well, Shoto?" "Oh, yeah, he's got a handle on it. He's emailed Nezu asking to borrow Cementos and power loader at the weekend for it. Shouldn't take more than a day. Mom is excited to have the herbal corner." "You got the Himuras to work there?" Tokiyami shook his head. "How on?" "Makumo Akitani was a fake name my brother used to work there for a while," Shoto explained, putting his book away. "Izuku knew and helped him put the case forwards. He protected my entire family since the beginning of the trial." Izuku just shrugged. "Just did what I could in the situation." He smiled gently. "But yeah, we'll head down to the cafe at lunch and I'll get you some drinks." "Is it not closed during school hours?" "Right now? Yeah. But we've got Shoto's older brother and sister coming over to hold it open while I get a rota for the business students set up. And you know the new school doctor? Dr. Chisaki. Works there too. He's offered to do a couple hours in the day when not needed in the office." Izuku tapped his desk with a grin. "Right. Now we should stop talking before Aizawa gets here." On cue the door slid open and a yellow sleeping bag caterpillared its way into the room. The class watched with many of them being mildly confused and or horrified before Aizawa climbed out and stowed the sleeping bag under the teacher's desk. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, that is irrational. He dropped a bag at the front of the class, put these on and meet me outside in the field in 5 minutes. But what about orientation? The brunette asked, throwing his head dead straight up into the air. UA is famed for its freestyle teaching. Orientation is not necessary for your education and so I have the liberty to skip it. Get moving. You now have 4 minutes and 50 seconds. The class scrambled to leave their seats. You too, Izuku. The brunette nodded as he pulled something from his bag. Yamada messaged that you'd have a rough night, made you a pick-me-up. Tossing the thermos to his teacher as he grabbed a gym uniform, Izuku left the room grinning. You're all on time, good, now we're going to be doing an apprehension test, like middle and high school, except this time, there are no rules on quirk usage, Aizawa smirked. Now, we're going to be doing a ball toss first, Katsuki Bakugo. That's me, you placed highest in the regular entrance exam, that means you get to go first. Izuku, your first lesson starts now. Analyze your classmates and their quirks, effort and general skill. To get the most out of this, you'll be going last in all events requiring one at a time. You got I, sensei. Why does Midoriya have a first lesson now while the rest of us are being tested, is there? God, you're as nosy as Yamada said you were. Iida Tenya, Izuku is analyzing you because he's not part of the hero course. Then what is, if you let me finish, Aizawa growled. His eye flashing red, Izuku is not part of the hero course. He is a different type of student altogether. Izuku is the first student to study directly under Principal Nezu in over a decade. He will be earning a hero license by taking part in the lessons with you, but since he has had his own business since he was 15, he's considered something of a prodigy and is helping teach the business students as well. He's going to be here to help you get better as heroes and for your sakes. Try and prevent me from expelling any of you, the group gulped, and to show I'm serious, whoever places last will have no potential and be. Then you better just explain to Nezu why I'm leaving now, sensei. Izuku spoke up. We both know out of everyone here, I'm going to be lowest individually. Physicality doesn't outright mean potential. I mean, look at you. If you took part here I'd be willing to bet half the students here could beat your score. Aizawa grinned at him. See, Iida? Izuku had already used his position to leverage my statement and protect you all from first-day expulsion. As well as point out the flaws in my argument that you were too busy panicking over to see. The brunette wisely closed his mouth. I see, please forgive the, no. Izuku bit back a laugh as Aizawa told him the same words he'd said not 10 minutes before. Now, Bakugo, get started. Leaning on the bench quietly he smiled, this should be fun. It was his turn to throw the ball. He had stood and turned to Aizawa, so I can't leave the circle? You can do anything so long as you don't leave the circle, yes. Uraraka, can I borrow you for a minute please? The brunette curiously wandered over and he handed her the ball. After her quirk activated, he held it and grinned to her. Turning his hand over and dropping the ball, it rose up beyond the stratosphere, giving him the save infinity score. During the distance run, Momo had created a bike with a bag try, letting Izuku pedal as she sat side saddle behind him, an arm around his waist. Aizawa had to tell him to stop, putting the duo in joint first place. The 100-meter dash was probably Katsuki's favorite as Izuku had asked him to throw him. So the pair had walked to the start on Izuku's turn and the brunette had jumped into his hands before the starting pistol fired, jumping as an explosion propelled him across the track. Sure, he hadn't been the fastest, but it had still been fast. The same again for the sandbox, with Katsuki throwing him with another explosion, more powerful from the higher amount of sweat he'd accumulated. During the grip strength, he'd simply handed his to Shoji, who crushed both his and Izuku's. Thanks to his work as Jade, the seated toe touch and sideways jumps weren't too difficult, with his higher stamina edging him out in the second event. His fall was in the sit-ups category. Momo has putting weight on his feet as he kept his hands behind his head. After 10 he began to feel a pain in his side. Blowing off her concern, he continued through the mild pain, getting to 55 before laying down and clutching his side. Izuku, what's wrong? Aizawa came over. If you're hurt you can say. I'm not hurt, sensei, it's not that. Shoji, Mina, Eijiro and Momo stared in concern. Then, it's an old wound, sensei, Momo supplied, an old, gunshot wound. Izuku, you were shot? The class stopped to look at him as Katsuki got up and walked over. When? How? 16. Got caught in the scope of a villain during a fight. Hadn't meant to get hit, it's healed now though. No, I don't think so. Aizawa shook his head. Momo, take him to see Recovery Girl and Chisaki please. Did he get it treated? Momo snorted. No, he vehemently argued against the hospital at the time, even while delirious from. If you're quiet done spilling my secrets, I'm fine too. No Izuku, you are not. Go and see Recovery Girl AMD Chisaki, now. Aizawa took no argument against the order, instead staring and watching as Momo dragged and dissenting Izuku away. Once they got through the door and was out of his sight, Momo slammed Izuku against a wall. You said you'd spoken to Recovery Girl about it, she hissed. You promised me you'd get it seen. I know, I'm sorry, alright. It's not easy asking for help. Yes, it's easier than it was before, but even now, even asking you for help, I freeze up. Izuku, she mumbled, you should know you can always ask me for anything, and it goes for Itsu as well. She spoke softly. Alright. Look, once we see Recovery Girl about it we can put the whole story to bed, alright? Yeah, I'd like that. If looks could kill, Izuku would be dead 4 times over. Recovery Girl nearly had a stroke from learning he'd left a GSW untreated in his gut, and Kai was just plain disappointed. Honestly, that hurt Izuku more than any other look combined with the beating he got from Recovery Girl's cane. Since he needed a X-ray, he and Momo had been signed out of the first day of school to go to the nearest hospital for the equipment. Most of the doctors and nurses gave him bewildered stares as he trudged past them, one arm on his gut and the other around Momo's shoulder. Kai and Recovery Girl had called ahead and booked an X-ray room, leading the way there after the uncomfortable car ride. Itsuka and the Green Tea Coffee UA branch staff had all been notified, and the ginger had quickly made her way over once orientation had finished, staring at him angrily as they waited for the results of his X-ray to be processed. Kai came to them and handed Izuku a surgery gown. Change, you're going in for surgery. Why? Because you have a bullet trapped in your muscle, dipshit, that's why. Izuku took the gown. Honestly, I know you know the bullet didn't go all the way through you, so why didn't you at least try and see if you could get it removed? Didn't want to, so instead you had to be signed out of classes on orientation day at uni. Yeah, that's so much better, Kai sighed. Just get changed. I've got a theater ready, it'll take maybe 5 minutes, since I'll have to dismantle your muscle layer by layer to find the bastard thing, and then close you up. The greenette nodded and walked into the bathroom, changing quickly. While he did, a bed had been wheeled in for him to get onto. Several nurses following Kai's orders to get him laid flat. He'll fight it, so we need to restrain him. No you don't, I know you, Izuku. You'll pussy out of this before we get to the doors for anesthetic. Why do I need anesthetic? I'm sorry, do you want to feel as I pull your muscles apart molecule by molecule? Anesthetic sounds great, that's what I thought. Kai nodded as they finished securing Izuku into the bed and began wheeling him away. Don't worry ladies, he'll be out in a few. They walked down the hallways through doors before he leaned into the greenette. You are all kinds of stupid, he hissed. What kind of self-sacrificing moron are you exactly, Izuku? You got shot and you didn't want to go to the hospital? Thank the trauma of being quirkless in an MLF nest for that. Lord knows I do. You're still a fucking idiot. It's a bloody miracle you've lived this long with that thing in you. You could have triggered any amount of internal bleeding. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if I open you up to some internal bleeding, since it took strenuous activity to bring it to light. It was sit-ups. It was solely using a muscle with a goddamn bullet in it, you idiot. They entered a small room and a plastic mask was placed over his face. Alright, take deep breaths and count back from 10. Nodding, Izuku inhaled the gas, mentally counting down as his eyelids grew heavy. When he opened them, he found himself in a completely different room, facing a new ceiling, with Kai stood at the foot of his bed. Itsuka, Momo and a few others were gathered around it. Good, you're up. After the surgery we were able to transport you back to UA's medical facility. Thanks to you, Nezu is investing in an on-site hospital. A GSW left unchecked, my god, Kai sighed. You've had a lot of people worried about you. You have 2 hours before you can be discharged, so don't get comfy. Nodding numbly, Izuku looked around. Alright, good luck. Now I have to go deal with actual first aid instead of a healed over bullet wound. Of all the things. He kept grumbling to himself as he left the room. Izuku audibly gulped. I know you're mad. No, we're not mad, Izuku. Honestly, we're just glad you're okay. Yeah, you guys aren't mad. I'm fucking livid. Katsuki made his way next to the bed and began shaking Izuku. You're a fucking moron, Dekiru. If you weren't already in the nurse's office, I'd beat you so bad you'd need to be here. Thanks for your concern, Kats. How did everyone do in the test? We all passed. Sensei called it a logical ruse. Bullshit, Momo and he both shook their heads. Aizawa expelled his entire class last year, that means nothing. Yeah well, whatever, he shook his head. Most of the staff for the cafe went home after hearing you were okay. But you should let them know in case, didn't tell me about thorns. My name is Abara Shiozaki Heathen, and I do not work in any cafe. I am here because my classmate is worried about her partner. Hey, just because cats understand quadratics without help doesn't make him a heathen. Oi, you are Midoriya, correct? That is I, Miss Shiozaki. Several of my classmates already speak highly of you, Kendo included, but IT orientation, her voice carried a hint of condescension. Blame our teacher for that, deciding to test us instead of letting us be part of orientation. We didn't go because we were told not to, not because we thought ourselves above it. Curb your assumptions. Save it, Miss Shiozaki, words are cheap, apologies are meant to be shown, not. Could you maybe not insult her like you did Iida Dekiru? At least she cared enough about Manhands to come and see why she was so worried. True, I was a bit harsh, thank you for at least caring for Suka. Is this Iida not very well mannered? He naturally assumed this kid having a panic attack was treating the entrance exam like a joke. Katsuki shook his head, berated me for putting my feet on the desk before classes began, assumed we were involved in illegal activities when we mentioned a trial. It was endeavors, by the way, further questioned Dekiru's placement on our course because he can't mind his own business, and interrupted the teacher with an assumption while said teacher was trying to explain. A stickler for the rules, but he get too invested too quickly. Izuku sighed. Better teach him how to escape that tunnel vision of his before his assumption leaping gets him killed. Izuku sighed, turning to get out of the bed. Whoa, what do you think you're doing? Itsuka grabbed his shoulder. Getting out of the bed so I can go home? No? Momo eased him to lay back down. You aren't going anywhere. Kai said you need to rest for 2 hours before being discharged, so you'd better stay right here. But, the cafe will run without us there for now. Hitoshi and Himiko are already on it. She smiled, keeping a hand on his chest, subtly forcing him to remain laying down. I'll go give them a hand. Katsuki waved a hand as he left. I'll make sure the ship don't sink without you. See, so you can relax, Momo reiterated. But there is a slight problem. Itsuka chuckled nervously. You guys remember Monoma? Oh god, really? Yeah. His exam scores were high enough to give him a place in 1B. Luckily there's only one feckwit aggressive enough to listen to him. Did he say anything to you today? Monoma hasn't interacted with most of the class. Shiozaki shook her head. He avoids the ones that already spoke of you and never joined conversation when your cafe was mentioned. Good, Vlad King already pulled me aside today. Itsuka held his hand. After your meeting with Nezu and the Monomas, he's on thin ice. Any slight transgression will result in his immediate expulsion. Shiozaki bristled. What could he have possibly done to warrant such action? You mean aside from calling me some hussy because we adopted an abused child? Momo raised an eyebrow. Or insinuating I was a mistress to the Izumo part of our relationship? Or literally any of this? Izuku pulled out his phone and scrolled to the screenshots of the reviews. Taking his phone, she blinked. Oh, you are in a triangular relationship? We all care for each other and love each other. Our attention is divided equally. An unusual relation to be sure, however it is in my religion to be open-minded, so I shall reserve judgment until I witness more of this. Looking at his phone, her face paled. That being said, I can't accept such profanity and bigotry, and this is about your cafe outside of Ua? Yup, I banned him from the premises when he first harassed Momo, and he's been a thorn in the side until the recommended exams, where I quite literally punched his face in and showed him the retaliation in store. When his parents tried suing through Nezu, we opened up the little Pandora's box and they've been silent ever since. And here I believed he was simply an uncouth individual. This is quite literally. He's used the same racial slur nearly 5 times in this comment alone. He called Kanoko a what? Yatsetsu is not a. I can see why you punched him in the face. In fact, I've half a mind to do the same after reading these. And you say there's more? Ooh, plenty more. The libel alone is a mint in lawsuits, the slander on his social media accounts too. And here he. Good lord, I wasn't aware those words could be in a person's vernacular. I feel as if I've sinned just by reading them. Might I just ask, are you in fact quirkless? Yup. Best part? I grew up in a neighborhood full of MLF members. Teachers were in on it too. Got lots of issues we're unwrapping up here. I can see why. How long have you had your cafe? Since I was 15, when I finally got the payout from the lawsuit against the company that killed my mother by overworking her through illegal hours when I was 13. Your father must. Zuku's father is a sore subject. He left the family when they found out Zuku was quirkless. It's not something he likes to talk about. Ah, my apologies, no harm no foul Shiozaki. He waved a hand to dismiss her, but I've not let comments like Monoma's get to me for a long time, so I won't let it start now. Ah, alright. Well, if there is anything I can do to help with him, do let me know, Kendo. Happily Shiozaki, the vine-haired woman fidgeted for a moment, seemingly debating internally. Is there something wrong, Shiozaki? What? No, nothing. It can wait until a later date. Shiozaki, please, whatever it is, it's fine, very well. With a heavy sigh and a red face, she looked Izuku in the eye. Could I get Katsuki's number? Honestly, you'd be better off asking him for it, Miss Shiozaki. He prefers a direct attitude. If you hurry, you may be able to catch him on his own. Thank you. She dashed for the door. Wow, did you just set Katsuki up? I can be a wingman. I got Hitoshi and Himiko together, didn't I? Sure honey. Momo kissed his forehead. We had nothing to do with it at all. His smug smile dropped into curiously annoyed. Hey, what's that mean? He woke up with a start, sweat dripping down his chest as he heaved in breaths. Carefully he removed himself from the pile Itsuka and Momo had made. Neither woman stirred as he stepped onto the soft carpeted floor, nor did they react to the almost silent movements of him creeping out of the room, shutting the door like a ghost. Stifling a shiver at the cold hard wood floor, he pressed onwards. The apartments only had one entrance here. Where the other door would have been was a balcony, and not like the porch balcony they had next to the door, an actual iron-railed balcony. Sliding the glass door as if more than a brush would break it, he stepped into the night air, shocking his body back into a normal breathing pattern. He hadn't had that nightmare in years. Of course, nightmares were par for the course at this point with his abandonment issues and self-esteem problems. His emerald eyes locked onto the moon, its silver gently lighting the surrounding area. At least you never go anywhere. The mantra he hardly used anymore, but he found himself speaking to the air. It was true. No matter what he went through next, he could always stare up at the moon and it would be the same old moon. The exact same chunk of space rock he'd seen since his first looking out at the night sky. It would be there no matter what happened. His hand idly drifted to his side, where the surgery had taken place. Kai had been quick and effective. Izuku gave him credit where it was due. There was no phantom pain, no brief flash of a tense muscle being cut, nor the strange sensation of a ghostly hand pressing against him. Sighing in relief, he stared up at the stars, remembering when he was little and his mom pointed out the constellations to him. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Pleiades, Canis Major and Minor, Virgo. For a few minutes he found the ones he could find. I made it, Mom. I'm really doing it now. I'm at UA. Whispering to no one, his words flew away in the gentle wind. Gently, he began unpacking the nightmare that had woken him up. The gun had fired in slow motion and he watched the bullet move through his chest. There hadn't been blood except for what was launched out of his back and dribbling down his shirt. It had gone straight through his heart as he looked back up at the sneering villain before the world shrunk to only him and the wound. His voice remained silent as he called out for help. No one around him willing to or noting that he needed help. He had stared at everyone's backs as he fell to his knees, only waking up when he was about to hit the ground. His pulse had eased now as he closed his eyes, taking a FWE more deep breaths. You haven't had a nightmare in ages. A pair of hands draped a blanket over his shoulders before Itsuka slid next to him, covered in her sky blue cotton pajamas complete with fuzzy blue slippers. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. You know Momo and I are light sleepers. The moment we noticed you weren't there we were up. Are you okay? No, he yawned, as his ginger partner rested her head on his shoulder, but I'm better than I was. It's just, I think having the surgery and bringing those memories back, it brought the nightmare with it, offset the good that happened with the downside, keeping things balanced out. You are allowed good things, Zuku. The world won't end if you don't frown for a few days. Kissing the top of her head, he smiled. I don't think so, but it's fine, you and Momo aren't going anywhere. Her head lifted away as Itsuka looked up at him, her hands dancing behind his neck. No, we aren't, Zuku. She leant onto her tiptoes to kiss him. You're stuck with us, now and forever. His arms dropped to her hips, coddling her gently. And I wouldn't have it any other way, he mumbled, kissing her again and pulling her body against his. Once they separated for air, she smiled warmly. Come on, Momo's brewing the tea to help us all get back to sleep. He let her take his hand and guide him into the apartment. They had to be quiet to avoid waking Eri, but otherwise it was fine. Hitoshi, Himiko and Mina had all moved into the 5th apartment when Itsuka, he and Momo had finally gotten together, much to their apparent relief. Which gave Eri her very own room, which the now 6-year-old marveled at. Sparing a quick glance to his daughter's bedroom door, he took the steaming mug from Momo and sat down on the sofa. We're here if you ever need to just talk, Izu, you know that, right? I do, Momo, but this needs a more physical treatment, so I just need time and reinforcement. The three cuddled on the large seat and a blanket was thrown over them at some point. Itsuka and Momo rested either side of him, hands entwined over his heart, so they could both feel his calming pulse. Soon enough all three drifted into sleep. As the door knocked, Izuku adjusted his tie a bit more as he opened it. Kai, you're early. No, the man checked his watch, you guys are a tad behind. Uncle Kai. Eri padded past the greenette, jumping into the brunette's arms. Hi Munchkin, ready to go see Pops and the others? Yeah, she nodded with excitement as Kai rested her on his hip. Right, well, Uncle Kai and Papa have to have a talk real quick, so why don't you go get Moma and Mama to hurry up? The small girl nodded before jumping from Kai's arms and dashing through the apartment. Both men watched her disappear. I owe you, Izuku. Still can't believe you guys had Eri this entire time. Yeah, and I'm sorry for lying in the beginning. A hand pat his arm. Chill out, man. We both know it was in everyone's better interests you guys kept her hidden. Honestly, I couldn't think of a better man to protect her. It had been a year ago, when Kai had begun therapy for his mysophobia when the therapist had separated it from germophobia. His application to medical school was also pending at the time. Izuku had taken Kai and Pops from the street cafe and into the UA cafe, up to the apartments. Pops was only there for supervision honestly, but both of them were happy to see Eri again. Kai had to go into the bathroom as he had begun breaking down, regretting whatever thoughts and plans he'd had for Eri when he'd been in the Yakuza. To Izuku it had been a major step in the right direction for the now doctor. Part of what helped him move past that was how much Eri adored her, Uncle Kai, and loved watching his quirk on her toys, making her toys move all on their own. She didn't understand he just reworked it to have animatronics inside. Over the last year Kai had been more forward about his idea of using Eri's quirk to erase quirks at large, and his recognition in how bad of an idea it was. Honestly, half of his drive to finally get his medical license was when Eri hurt herself falling off the shelves climbing up for her toys that had been put away. Hey, could I get your opinion on something? Sure? I was thinking about renaming my quirk. Seriously? Yeah. Overhaul just sounds so back alley, like chop shop garage slang. So I was thinking about renaming it, something different, more approachable. What did you have in mind? Rework or rewrite? Because, as you know, my quirk can work on the atomic scale, changing amino acids. If I really focused, I could change a person's genetic code if they asked me to. You could really edit chromosomes if there was a desire from the patient. Izuku hummed and nodded. You'd be probably one of very few people allowing for a gender change that results in work in genitals. Literally rewriting a person's code, or reworking their body. So which do I go for, do you think? Rewrite sounds more medical to me. Rework still sounds like engineer talk. Point. Right, well, Chio knows to call me if something's up, so after I drop Eri at the other cafe before school, I can swing by the registry office and get it renamed. You need cash for the fee? No, it's alright. After all, you give me a full wage unlike the live-ins. I've got enough cash to spare. Oh, and I've wanted to tell you, Pops and I are moving to a new place, actual house teen here and a school. So Eri can be dropped off with us and then I can pick her up on my break. Practical I'm sure, but you don't have to worry about that. Unless there's another reason you want to move. Kai rubbed the back of his head. I'm thinking about asking Fuyumi to move in with me. Wow, that's good luck. Unless Tuya's already given his seal of approval. A quick nod. Good. Well, I'm happy for you, Kai. After everything you've worked for, you deserve it. And I plan to keep working to keep deserving it. Kai nodded as Eri charged back at them, with Itsuka and Momo in tow. Alrighty. Well, come on Munchkin. We've got a walk ahead of us. Holding her hand gently, Kai guided her to the stairs. See you later, guys. Bye Papa, bye Mama, bye Moma. Eri waved as they moved down the stairs. Izuku grinned as they all began putting on their shoes. Today you're going to be doing something very important. It may be a key turning point in your development as heroes today. You are. Izuku flopped his head on the desk as Aizawa rose the tension higher and higher. Choosing a class president, there was a beat of silence. Something normal, the class exclaimed. Now it's up to you to decide. Don't wake me until it's over. I don't care how you do it, but do it before homeroom is over. Izuku calmly stood up as Iida shot up and told everyone to try and be organized, lowering their hands, while his wad raised highest of all. We should do this democratically. He nodded at the brunette's words while walking to the front. Midori. That is absolutely correct, Iida. We should do this democratically. For that reason I am going to be the judge. Since I'm only in your homeroom, I can neither be president or vice nor vote on who it should be. It makes me the perfect third party to make sure there's no bias. He grinned. Were you about to suggest a vote, Iida? Yes I was. There was a curious bit of resentment in Iida's gaze that he pointedly ignored. Alright, Momo, could you please make a hat or something? Walking over to the teacher's desk, he grabbed some sheets of blank paper and folded them into pieces before tearing it apart and placing a slip on each person's desk. Write out who you want as a class president. It can't be yourself. Whoever has the most becomes president and whoever is second get vice. Sound fair to everyone? A general nod of agreement. Wonderful. Walking back to Momo, he gently took the hat and smiled. I'll come round and you can all drop your votes in here. Once I have them all, I'll count out the votes and put them up on the board. Slowly making his way around the room, he patiently waited for everyone to finish before standing at the front. Alright, can I get someone to write it down as I read it out? I'm on it, Katsuki grumbled in faux annoyance, as if he weren't the first person up and instead was doing it because no one else was. Grabbing the chalk he whispered, you are a goddamn legendary wingman. Oh, Shiozaki actually got your number? Date, this weekend, taking her somewhere nice, fancy, might drop by the cafe first though, not overwhelm her. Makes sense. Turning back to the class and raising his voice to a normal level he continued. Alright, first we have, Madam Yayorozu with 5 votes, Miss Uraraka with 3 votes, Mr. Iida with 4 votes, and I believe that's it. Considering there's 3 other names and only 8 votes left, we have Yayorozu as your president with Iida as the vice. Now there are probably a few more roles they will be made aware of. They will tell you what they are and who will be in charge of them. Everyone happy with his arrangement? Nobody argued, most heads nodding while others showed a hint of indifference. Izuku nodded and put the hat on his head as the bell rang. Good day to you all then. Tipping the hat with a grin, he walked out of the classroom, ready for his first lesson with Nezu. Ah, Izuku, right on time. The Chimera welcomed him into the office, a second desk and a chair sitting opposite his own. Come take a seat, we're going to be going over your analysis of 1A from yesterday as well as some footage of 1B doing the test today. Nodding as he sat down, Izuku watched the screen behind Nezu flicker to life and show pictures of his analysis Aizawa had given to Nezu along with the camera footage the drones had captured. First up, let's do Tenya Iida, the brunette. Izuku felt there had been a particular reason for the confrontational team to go first. They watched him as he tossed the softball up before using his quirk and kicking it across the field. His score was amongst the various physically enhancing quirks, just shy of the distance Momo got with a fucking cannon. On the picture of his notes, some text was highlighted. Over-reliance on legs. Upper body strength probably lacking. Why do you say he could be lacking upper body strength? The power in his calves clearly beats out a normal throw, but more so than that I noticed how he keeps his bag light and often puts the weight on his lower back as well as his shoulders. His school bag is more akin to a hiking bag that fixes on with a complete harness, instead of 2 straps. How do you know that's not to stabilize his bag when he uses his quirk? Iida strikes me as a rule follower. He won't use his quirk in public until he has his license. Which negates that possibility. He has already begun trapping himself in his perceived fallacies of UA's rules. He interrupted the exam due to impatience according to Yamada's recounting. Criticized Aizawa when he told me I had to analyze the class as they went. Trying to oust me to the class as a deviant when Aizawa revealed I wasn't on the hero course and also jumped to a conclusion that either Katsuki, Momo or I were a miscreant when we mentioned last seeing each other at the trial. A trial which he had no prior knowledge of and so should not have jumped to any conclusion. A small pause. He believes all information given is 100% accurate and questions when something does not fit this train of thought. He is also one of many that fled the zero-pointer, however he is also one of few that noticed Urikara needed help, yet he continued fleeing. He probably reassured himself that, had it been a real-life scenario, or something along those lines he would not have run. You disagree? He ran, in a simulation for real life, where they knew the robot was an obstacle and not a danger. Information he himself all but demanded for Yamada. Tenya Iida still fled. His actions overrule any of his words about a real scenario because he had all the facts before him, yet he still fled. Solution: he must speak to Hound Dog about his current way of thinking. It is too narrow for heroism. He'd be more suited as a judge or perhaps a lawyer, following rules and regulations. But he still holds some potential, so he must learn to expand his worldview. It's too black and white right now. He must learn that the gray zone exists and can be used for heroics. Nezu nodded. Now I'd like to play you a small video taken from the end of the test. It involves Iida and Aizawa, over a discussion about you. Izuku sighed and nodded. The screen flickered as the file began running. Sensei. Iida's hand shot up. How did Midoriya place so highly? He did not use quirk once and relied on other people's in the majority of the events? Iida, Midoriya placed highly because he scored highly. He scored highly because he thought outside of the box. By working with Uraraka he was able to match her score. Walking with Bakugo he was able to move fast and far under the power of a controlled explosion. Which I must give credit to you Bakugo, since you have such a fine control already, putting such power in yet not even singing his clothing. The soles of his shoes are burnt but I did my best, Katsuki spoke off screen. And he scored high on grip strength by recognizing there was a better option in the form of shoji. His idea of cycling with Yaoyorozu again showed his ability to work with others. Midoriya SCE has a lot of potential. Iida, able to recognize that physicality was not the only way to score in this test. Insiat putting his ego to one side and accepting the help he needed to accomplish a task, without the need for his own quirk. Regardless Sensei, Midoriya should still have demonstrated his quirk. For what reason Iida? So you could acknowledge his quirk and use that as the excuse as to why he beat your score? Or because you have the need to know? Because, he knows of our quirks, it is only fair. Fair? Iida. Here's a quick life lesson. Life is not fair. It is hardly ever going to be fair. Midoriya has had more obstacles than you realize and he has still been able to pull through and earn his position in this school. However, if you must know, I have already cleared it with both him and Nezu to tell you. Midoriya Izuku is quirkless and he will continue to be so until he passing. If he ever dies, that is. Boy is stubborn to a fault, petty too. Well, no extra cookie for you then. Izuku folded his arms, getting a chuckle from Nezu at his joke. Aizawa was in fact getting extra cookies, because he seemed fierce in his defense of the Green. But then he surely shouldn't be here. Heroics is a dangerous profession and with his disability. You have a problem with Izuku's quirklessness? Shoji was the first to step in. Well? Is that quirkism I hear? Hitoshi stepped up to the plate too. I guess I better run and be a villain with my brainwashing. I mean it's only logical, right? Izuku nodded. The lessons with Aizawa were clearly paying off. Let's get one thing clear extra, Katsuki growled with small explosions popping between his fingers, his rage on clear display. You got a problem with Dakiri, you're going to have a problem with me. To insult a man you hardly know, such madness should only be found in the darkest of man's heart. Tokiyami shook his head. He has already proven to Dark Shadow and myself his abilities are beyond our scope. Even Kodo was shaking his head in disappointment. Iida Tenya, quirklessness is not a disability. Whoever told you that was wrong. Very wrong. I fight without a quirk, does that mean I should quit heroics? No sensei, Hitoshi is going to be fighting without a quirk, as is Yaoyorozu, Koda, Kaminari, Aoyama, Ojiro, Sato, Hagakure and Mineta. That's 9 students, nearly half of all students in your class. Never mind the students in Class 1B. Should they all give up now? No, sensei, but they do possess a quirk that can. Iida, a quirk is nothing more than a tool in a person's arsenal. To rely solely on that would be to limit yourself to one method of operation. What if you were stuck indoors, in a cramped environment, unable to use your quirk? That is the majority of battles actually happen indoors, Iida. So actually your quirk would be more of a hindrance indoors than Midoriya's quirklessness outside due to your over-reliance on it. The Dio ended. Thoughts? I'm hugging all of them and Aizawa is getting free cough for a week. He hummed before shaking his head. Oh, you mean on Iida? His attitude is a problem. Otherwise it's the same over-reliance. Maybe show him the MLF and expose him to what they do. His current train of thought is rather close to their distinctive ideology. Perhaps getting him to point out the flaws there will highlight the flaws in his own argument. Any final words? He is the younger brother of Tensai and wishes to one day take the mantle of Ingenium too. He embodies Ingenium to a fault, but he misses the mark for Tensai Iida. Nezu quickly wrote something down and smiled. Next, Ochako Uraraka. He quickly made his way back through the halls as both classes were released for lunch. The green tea coffee family naturally gravitated towards each other as Katsuki met with Izuku. How'd it go? The blonde was first to speak in the larger group around them. Brilliantly, we went over my analysis of yesterday and watched some of the footage of the apprehension tests. Yeah, we finally got round to that today. Itsuka rolled her eyes in mock annoyance. Izuku kissed her forehead. You did brilliantly. He put one arm around her before pulling Momo into his other, as did you yesterday, matching his kiss to Itsuka. He held them both to his sides. As for the rest of you, lunch is on me, for the week. Not that I'm complaining. Jiroda lifted an eyebrow as he and Komori walked hand in hand, but why? Well, Class A jumping to defend my quirklessness from Iida, and Class B for not killing Monoma when he tried bad-mouthing Class A, Momo huffed. Did he really do that? Unfortunately, Shoji nodded his head. He does not seem to realize the quirkish nature of his statements. He seems almost annoyed that we didn't agree with him. A narrow-minded worldview. Nezu and I already discussed how to combat it. That being said, go and grab your lunches while I find us a table. Taking out his wallet, he gave it to Katsuki. As I said before, lunch is on me. I'll get a table before grabbing mine. Leaving before they could object, Izuku found the biggest table he could and calmly sat down it on end, using his bag to block the other side. Alone, a voice sneered. Did they screw off Monoma? Izuku folded his arms in his seat, leaning his head back. If I wanted your opinion, I'd go looking for it in the bin. Move. We of Class B want the large table too. No, because my friends are already sat here. I'm just here to make sure assholes like you don't steal it. We are superior. That's funny. I don't remember asking and I just can't be bothered to care. Move. Monoma growled forcefully. Make me bastard. His hand reflexively caught the fist aimed for his face. Just because he'd gone out as Jade less, didn't mean the reactions weren't there anymore. Tilting his hand, he bent Monoma's wrist backwards as he CL-mibed from his seat. Now I said screw off, either do as I've asked or I force you to. What could a quirkless waste like? How's your nose doing again? A cold, cruel smirk. Strong enough for me to break in a punch again? Or can I really hit you this time? Monoma huffed. What's going on here? Itsuka spoke behind him, looking over his shoulder. He saw everyone had their trays of lunch food. Monoma, what are you? None of your business who you are. Izuku's hand gripped his throat. I'd choose your next words very, very carefully, boy, because I'm sure you're aware of how thin the ice preventing you from swimming in it is. A snarl. Be grateful I've still got patience enough to not press charges yet. Press charges? Monoma, what did you do? A boy with a green mohawk and mandibles questioned. Oh, you know, some libel, slander, harassment of Momo and Itsuka. Stuff that could be described as corporate espionage, which is highly illegal. Izuku shrugged. I thought he wouldn't be at least told you about how he views the quirkless. We only thought having lunch together would let us get to know each other better. A stout boy with faded blue hair shook his head. We hardly know a thing about Monoma. Well, I'm sure that your classmates behind me would happily fill you all in if you want to join us for lunch. The table is large enough for us all. Monoma excluded obviously since he can't be civil around me and my coworkers. You dare, try me, his eyes narrowed at the blonde, who huffed and turned to walk away. Come on guys, we don't need them. He made it several paces before realizing no one was with him. We want to hear what they have to say. A boy that looked to be made of shadows and silvery hair shook his head. The much larger group began to get seated as Monoma growled ferally at Izuku before storming away. Obviously he was last, going to get his own lunch before returning to his seat. Just before he could begin eating however, an alarm began blaring. People began panicking and yelling. The upperclassmen quickly forming a rabble charging for the exit. Oh, I've had enough for today. Climbing onto his table he cupped his hands around his mouth. Hey! Screaming of the crowd. Taking a deep breath, he tried again. Ooey! Everyone froze. Before you go panicking like a group of goddamn toddlers, how about you try figure out what fucking caused you to run around like some headless chickens? Pointing to the window, he continued, if anyone can see out of the window, why not tell the rest of them what's going on? It's just the press. See? You are students and you fucking and not some bloody siege group. Now how about you act like it and line up in an organized manner to that you can leave without actually killing the people you've been trampling? On cue. There were several groans of pain, along with many bewildered looks at the floor. Izuku Midoriya, could you please make your way to the teacher's lounge? Nezu spoke over the PA system. Now that a first year has had to re-educate you on your behavior, how about you act like the adults you are? Climbing down from his table, he quickly grabbed a handful of food, putting it in his mouth as he left the room. Aizawa and Nezu had been waiting for him at the teacher's lounge. Together the three ended up walking down to the front gate, or rather, the hollow remains of the gate. Meijima was already on the scene with Ishiyama, both crouching at where the gate should have been. Already Izuku had a sinking feeling in his gut. There was a noticeable gray line on the outside edge of the barrier deploy opening. Izuku gulped as they reached the gate. It was highly unlikely, right? Right? It was totally destroyed, Ishiyama noted. The press aren't able to do something so destructive, especially not with cameras on them. It wasn't destroyed, Ken. I'm finding tons of rust particles. It didn't break down, it was decayed at an alarmingly fast rate. Izuku closed his eyes and took a deep breath as he crouched by the dust, brushing through it with his own hand. A sick feeling rising up into his throat as his heart rate soared. His whole existence froze when he found a small yellow note. We got recordings of a figure, clad in black. He stuck something to the door and then it just disappeared. Nezu, is Class 1A going to the USJ at some point? Izuku picked up the note with trembling hands and began reading it. The week after next, All Might will be a sighting in the teaching. Why? Well, forgive me, I'm just going into catatonic shock right now. No, it can't be true. Reading the note again he resisted the urge to throw up what little lunch he had. I know exactly who did it. How? The problem is, he's been missing for over a year almost. Looking back to where he found the note, was a very familiar pair of artist gloves. Izuku wanted to be sick. His face drained so much he had no blood left to lose in it. Handing the note over to Nezu, the words were forever scorched into his mind, into his memory. Schedule, attack USJ, don't want to hurt anyone, All Might target. The warning made his skin crawl, but the writing on the other side was far worse. Hurting me, torture, please help. Izuku fell back from his heels and just stared at the dust while his vision began getting blurry. Tamura, I'll save you, no matter what. To say Izuku zoned out would be an understatement. For the next day and a half, he could only think of the note and how he'd saved Tamura. His heart was in his feet from guilt. Katsuki was ready to fight whoever the moment Izuku told him about the note. Green tea coffee were all made aware of the situation. Everyone was, the Himuras, Pops, Kai, Shoji, Hitoshi, the entire UA branch staff. Even Kaneki when he visited the street cafe, since he'd known Tamura well from his time in the cafe. Everyone knew Izuku would be hit the hardest, falling into an echo routine where conversation was just the same series of noises from him as he did things automatically while his mind wandered. He didn't even react as Toshinori burst into the room with a cry of, "I am coming," through the door like a normal person. In what was probably the most abnormal way of walking through a door, he didn't join in on the class chatter as they all were excited to finally have a hero lesson. He didn't even bother outing All Might for deviating from the lesson plan and making them fight each other instead of the quirk training lesson the Greenette had seen Aizawa give him. The only thing to bring him from his stupor was Momo gently taking his hand in hers, getting him to look over at her. "We'll save him, I know we will," he whispered, "because I don't know what I'll do if we don't," a small noise of concern as she brought him into a hug. "Everything's going to be fine, alright. You're going to do what you always do and save the people asking for help." I have to save him, I have to Momo. I let him down once before, I'm not going to do it again." Together they moved with the class to grab the cases containing their hero suits. Everyone else seemed excited to see their suits. He'd already had his on when he was going out at Jade before the academic year started. Lugging his case along, he walked with Momo, slowly becoming less and less numb. Idly he noted the strain on Ida's face he was trying to hide as the brunette did his best to subtly hurry to the changing rooms. "I know how you feel about it, Izuku." "I do. Tamura was a favorite customer. You were trying to help him like you helped Kai, but something went wrong. You thought Tamura had disappeared. Now he's back and he's called for help. It's worrying. You're worried about him. You want to rescue him, I know, and I know you will save him. Bose, that's what you do, Izuku. Look at everyone else you've helped. Just look at Shoto," said Bicolored Boy saluted as he walked. He wasn't part of the staff at Green Tea Coffee, but he was still kept up to date with the latest goings-on. "Things are going to be alright, Izu. I promise. Is everything alright, Midoriya?" They both turned to see a purplet walking next to them. "Everything's fine, Jiru." Mina came to their rescue, jumping onto Izuku's back. "He's just been a bit stressed from the break-in on Tuesday. Just lucky it's Friday, I guess." "Mina, is there a reason you've jumped on my boyfriend's back?" Momo raised an eyebrow. Apparently a polyamorous relationship helped with jealousy, who knew? "Not really, just don't want to walk all that way. Plus they are right next door to each other, so it's not like it's far out of his way." She gripped the handle of her costume's case in both hands in front of his neck, locking her ankles together around his waist. "Plus his back is like, super comfy, must be all the muscle he's got back here. Don't break him at least." Momo shook her head with a smile, not letting go of his hand. "Suka may have a thing to say about it." "Suka?" Jiru tilted her head. "Their girlfriend, Itsuka in Class B." Mina smirked. "They have a kind of ménage à trois going on, a head roll. I mean back at the cafe they're always so lovey-dovey. If you want to join in, all you have to do is ask." Both Izuku and Momo spoke at the same time, making the pink woman go several shades darker as she blushed. Jiru sputtered. "So, you're some kind of womanizer, are you?" He sighed and rolled his eyes. "If that means you don't comment on what makes us happy, then yes. Okay, maybe he'd been a bit cold, but there was no way he'd let another Monoma twist their relationship. Nope. He was nipping that in the bud right now." Momo shook her head. "No, Izu is not a womanizer, thank you, Jiru. He makes both Itsu and I happy, dividing his attention to make sure neither of us feel left out. It goes the same with myself and Itsu. We make it work because we all love each other. Currently it's also exclusive because no one expresses interest in all three of us, instead focusing on solely one person." Izuku shook his head, "And that doesn't fly with any of us. I happen to be the worst offender in that regard, as many, high-class, suitors try and capture my attention, more so now that I've, come out about my bisexuality. So if someone had a crush on all three of you and you all liked them? We'd certainly try." Momo nodded. Izuku is unsure about it because he doesn't want a person to feel left out, but he already does all the little things that make us feel appreciated. "You should have seen him last year, Jiru." Mina grinned. "He spent ages learning high-fat recipes for Yaomomo's quirk and these weird hand signs from Naruto so help Itsuka get more coordinated with her hands." He was jostled in her excitement. "Go on, Midori. Show her your jutsus," sighing as she giggled. Izuku lifted his hands, one holding Momo's while the other carried his case. "I can't, Mina, I've already got my hands full." "Well anyway, he's always doing the little things," Mina pouted, "like making sure their favorite shampoos don't run out, or running them a bath if the cafe's been busy. Sometimes he even takes Eri out in the evenings so they have a chance to relax." Eri, their adopted daughter, Shoto finally joined in their conversation, standing the other side of Momo. "When they were, I want to say 16. Yeah, a year before the investigation about Endeavor. So yeah, we'd all be 16, right?" Izuku nodded with a smile. "Yeah, 16. This Hisaki boss rocks up to Izuku's cafe. spins this story about how his absentee dad was a high-ranking Yakuza member and how the boss's granddaughter is in danger. After some evidence, Izuku takes her in. Fast forward a few days and the new boss shows up. He's trying to use Eri for his plans. Izuku of course plays dumb and keeps Eri safe. Skip to a year later and both bosses left the Shihisaki, reunite with Eri and get jobs working in Izuku's cafe. The new doctor is one of them actually. After talking to Izuku regularly for like a year, his worldviews shifted. Now he's already a rising star in the medical field. Wait, Chisaki was Yakuza? It's not a time he talks fondly of? Izuku shook his head. He's wanted to help the world. But his misophobia was an issue, until he met the Yakuza. Interacting with them led him to believe quirks were a disease and he was planning on doing some pretty bad things that to the effect the Yakuza had on his mental state. Once he began visiting my cafe, we started talking about issues like what it meant to be a hero, helping for the sake of being kind. After I had him doing a daily good deed, his mental state improved and slowly he began facing the misophobia. Honestly, to say I'm proud at this point would be an understatement. It took him 5 years to completely go from leader of the Shihisaki to a renowned neurosurgeon. I understand being proud, I mean, anyone would be, Jiru mumbled, that's pretty incredible. It took ages to help him, but it was all worth it to see him happy now. Before he couldn't leave without a mask and gloves on his face. Now he only wears them for surgery. Slowly Mina climbed off his back as they reached the changing rooms. See you out on the field. His uniform was simple, like he'd always had it, black pants, coupled with a dark green shirt under a black trench coat. The belt around his waist held an assortment of tools, along with several blades and firearms, of course rubber pellets and dulled blades until he had AL weapons. Aizawa had suggested the substitutes for training in the meantime. His mask covered the lower half of his face, hooking over his ears and magnetically locking in place around the back of his head. It contained an air filter, noise cancellation and a communicator. On his forehead rested a pair of goggles that were honestly a marvel, a complete spectral pair of lenses, letting him see anything from X-ray to infrared waves, onboard computer to aid him in real-time analysis and a connection to the hero database so he could identify heroes and villains and how to work with, against them. There were also recording and live feed capabilities for surveillance and it connected to the digital keyboard on the inside of his left sleeve. On each wrist was his signature wrist-mounted grappling devices, beefed up to fuck thanks to UA's support department getting a crack at them. His black combat boots had high-power magnetic discs in the bottom so he could fight on top of cars, trucks, trains and planes as well as sticking to most walls. They also had a repulsion blast he could use for a second mid-air jump or add a boost to his regular jumps. Adjusted his sleeves one more time, he pulled on his fingerless gloves. As he stepped into the sunlight, he shielded his eyes from the harsh glare before pulling his goggles down and allowing them to adjust to the exposure so he could see. Now you all look the part of heroes, you young zygotes, but being ready to walk the catwalk is only half the battle. Now you must learn how to walk the walk. This battle training will have you fighting 2-on-2, but thanks to our additional hero, we'll have 1 3-on-2 match. Izuku groaned quietly as All Might pulled out a notepad and read from a script. Now the fighting arena is going to be indoors today and the villains have a bomb that the heroes must find. Most of these pairs will be random, except I've been asked today to make sure young Midoriya and young Iida work together today. So you two will be going last. Young Midoriya? Izuku lowered his hand. Can we also be the team that fights the team of 3 sensei? Of course young Midoriya, I like your drive. Now onto the lots to decide the rest of the teams. Izuku felt a hand on his shoulder. Are you simply insane Midoriya? A 3-on. I know what I'm doing Iida. Relax. Shrugging him off, Izuku remained cold. Wait, a voice spoke up, your outfit looks familiar Midoriya. They turned to the invisible Toru Hagakure. Do you know the vigilante Jade? Of course I know him, he nodded, grinning behind his mask, he is me. You are a vigilante too? Do you have want to know the funny part about me being Jade? Hagakure? Interrupting the brunette's tirade before it could begin, he tried locking eyes with the invisible woman. Sure, what? A quirkless man can't be a vigilante by law, so really anything I do is classified as a civic duty. A smug shrug as Iida quickly fell silent. It's awesome, hardly any laws are made with a person like me in mind. I can be absolved of everything short of murder according to law. Even then it's a gray zone depending on how I do it. Should we be worried? Denki Kaminari chuckled. Nah, Eijiro shook his head. Rodoria is as manly as they come. Running his own business while saving people and doing his civil service. I hope I don't have to go against him, that's for sure. And our team of 3 is Katsuki Bakugo, Eijiro Kirishima and Mina Ishido. Aw man, guess I spoke too soon huh? He chuckled. You're going down Deikiru. Bring it on Kats. Izuku planted a fist into his hand, cracking his knuckles. Momo had been partnered up with the short purplet man. Minoru Mineta, if his memory served, and while a bit on the pervy side, Izuku had yet to see anything really creepy from him. It was all just glances to the women's rears or chests. Was it impolite? Yes. Could he stop? Again yes. Did it mean that Izuku inherently hated him? No, not really. All Mineta needed was a talking to, something to just draw out that little bit of respect. He was still a teen after all, so it wasn't unheard of for a guy to try sneak a peek. Watching their match against Kaminari and Ojiro, Izuku noted his distaste for the poorly designed costume. While the green tea coffee students had theirs designed by Powerloader and built by UA for ease and speed, the other students had their designs sent off the third-party creators. Nezu would want to know that one company gave a student a piece of equipment that looked like a literal diaper. It was probably meant to look like a bowl since his hair looked like a bunch of grapes, but it just wasn't working like that. During the mock battle, Mineta and Momo were the heroes. Mineta made no perverse comments to Momo and listened to her plan intently. His eyes didn't wander from the plan they were making on high ground, and he seemed to be taking his role seriously. Once the buzzer sounded, Momo had darted into the building, while Mineta moved around the alley to the back, strategically throwing the purple orbs on the ground and jumping off them. He continued to create the improvised bounce pads on the walls either side of the alley until he reached the roof. I'm on the top, making my way down now. First floor clear, was Momo's response. The rest of the class could listen in thanks to the earpieces being on the same frequencies as the main console in the viewing area. Izuku watched in admiration and analysis as they moved towards the middle of the building. The bomb has to be on the 4th floor, use your quirk to move around the outside of the building and see if you can find it. On it, the purple hero climbed out of a window, using the balls to turn the building into a rock climbing wall while Momo crept around the corridors. Her costume had faced a serious change. The original design was a leotard with a section in the front and back removed, along with an armored skirt that held an encyclopedia of complex atomic structures for her quirk. Powerloader had taken it as an insult to design work and an affront to humanity, instead making a full-body self-repairing nanonmesh weave that she could tear off at any point for larger objects. The encyclopedia was gone. Instead, a small bracelet with a screen on her inner right arm took its place. The skirt got to stay, but only because it protected her hips and upper legs. The original design for the leotard was used as the coloring scheme for the new suit, now with a red eye mask and her hair let down out of the ponytail. Izuku nearly suggested she get a cowl added to keep her hair out of her way and keep the mask, but she was already so much happier with the new costume. As she found the room with the bomb in it, she tore part of the suit off her arm. The lights shining as a rubber board erupted in front of her. Kaminari grinned and slammed his hands to the floor. Indiscriminate shock, 500,000 volts. Lightning erupted from the point of contact as Momo hurriedly put the board down and stood on top of it, careful to not touch the floor at all. As the lightning calmed down, Ojiro jumped from his position on top of the bomb, landing ready to fight. Kaminari was out of action as he kept his thumbs up and just going. As he walked mindlessly around the room. Momo shot a bow staff from her hand and began using it to fight Ojiro in his tail. Izuku grinned as he saw the conspiratorial smirk on her face and looked away from the attention-capturing fight. He and Katsuki were the only two to look at the other feed, that showed Mineta, sitting on one of his balls outside the window, SLOWL creating a long chain of purple balls. As Tay fight went on inside, they watched him try to reach the bomb with the pole, falling short and pulling it back with a frown, only to add more on and try again. Once it did stick to the bomb, he tried pulling it back, but after realizing it had no effect, stuck the other end to the top of the window frame. Izuku had to give him points for creativity as he shimmied along the chain upside down, eventually planting it. The hero team wins. All Might signaled the end of the match. Both teams come back for analysis of the fight. Young Ojiro, if you could help young Kaminari back please. Izuku clapped along with the class as the teams returned. Alright, Midoriya, due to your disinherent nature, I suggest you take a back seat to this, avoid as much confrontation as possible, remaining out of it entirely if possible. Check. Do we have a 20 on the bomb's location or are we going in blind? Scanners show it's in the far side of the building, we can't pinpoint which level it's on though Jade. That's enough information for me, thanks, Izuku grinned as he looked to Iida. Most heroes actually have a guy in the chair for them, giving them information in real time. Even All Might did at once, a guy called David Shield, before he opened Island anyway. Darting to the building, Izuku looked over his shoulder. Try keep up Gonzalez. Rounding a corner he heard the telltale explosions of Katsuki charging at him. I got you Dekiru. Izuku grabbed the hand swinging for him. You always lead with a left hook Kats. Judo flipping the blonde. Both men were grinning madly as he leapt backwards, readying the capture tape. Oh, it's on now. Katsuki threw up a smokescreen with his explosions before charging forwards at high speeds. Twisting his body, Izuku reacted as fast as he could to Katsuki's sudden change of direction as the blonde charged over his head. Knocked off balance by an explosion behind him, Izuku stumbled into a roll and let Katsuki trip over him, snagging his ankle with some tape. Katsuki Bakugo has been eliminated, goddammit Dekiru. At least let me have a little fun. Sorry Kats, I'll make it up to you in a spare later. Yeah, kick-ass Dekiru. Katsuki shook his head before leaving the building, heading for the observation room. Izuku found himself frowning as he raced up the flights of stairs. He had to be faster, stronger, better if he was going to save Tamura. Whatever bastard had him needed to be sorry for what they did and Izuku needed to be powerful enough to do it. His friend was hurting and here he was playing heroes and villains like school kids. Kicking a door down, he found the floor covered in a thin film of whatever acid Mina made, the pinkette smiling teasingly at him from the bomb. Wanna try your luck? Some of the floor's been weakened enough that a single step will drop you into the room below. Think you're fast enough to find the right path? Thanks Bakugo for distracting you long enough for us to finish this. Suddenly tackled from behind, Izuku and Eijiro crashed to the floor and knocked through it. The redhead had activated his quirk on his arms, so they broke the ground instead of Izuku's face. Bye-bye hero. Mina called. Izuku looked up and fired a cord up, latching onto the floor, ceiling, causing it to crumble with them as it broke under the combined weight of two men. It began to cause the entire floor to crumble, getting a yelp from Mina as she fell too. After he and Eijiro hit the floor, the greenette was free to move, dashing forwards to catch the pinkette before she hit the floor and was hurt by the falling rubble. Some capture tape around her wrist as he let her down and it was only him and Eijiro left. Iida had yet to actually appear, probably still searching the lower floors by the book. Taking a deep breath, Izuku took stock of the situation. One unbreakable team getting to his feet, ready to fight, the paper match bombs still on the remaining ground above them. An ever-shrinking timer meaning he didn't have much time to win. So bossman, Eijiro grinned as his whole body sparked, becoming a lot sharper. Fancy your luck? Against you? Not really, he chuckled, but firing a wire randomly behind me and getting to the bomb on sheer chance. Yup. The man stopped as a cord attached to the wall, see ya, suddenly yanked away. He grinned as Eijiro leapt for him, only to miss by microseconds. The bomb flew by him as well as he stuck to the wall by the soles of his boots. Ah well, at least I can. Hold on, Eijiro yelled, running at the wall and jumping, his hardened feet crating the wall and allowing him the chance to sprint up it. Just try get it now. The redhead charged through the flooring that held the bomb up, causing it to finally fall. Challenge accepted. Izuku leapt for it, firing the cord into the middle of the ceiling and swinging down. His feet planted on the side of the bomb and he quickly detached the wire end before fixing it to the bomb, a neat feature that Powerloader had suggested, leaving him free to fight while it supported possible debris. A new load of wire swiveled round the bracelet and into place as All Might announced. The hero team wins. Izuku stood atop the sideways bomb as if were a pirate ship suspended in midair, with a bit of stylish flair too. Man, that really was a one-sided fight. Eijiro fell back to the floor as Izuku lowered himself down. Are you not going to? He pointed at the wire and the suspended bomb. No, the cleanup bots will get to the support department where they'll check the wire for any tearing before reinstalling it on the suit when they get it back. Dude, Midori, you were so badass, swinging in to shake off Kiri and swooping in to save the heartthrob villainous. Mina teased, putting an arm to her forehead in mock faintness. And zooming off to the wall before catching a falling bomb. It's straight out of a comic book. Thanks Mina, but it's really not that amazing. I was just reacting to everything you guys were doing. Are you kidding me? You wiped the floor with this dude? Bakugo decided to try play distraction while we finished up the trap, but when you took him out so quickly we had to improvise. Yeah, you did great for what you had to work with, I mean, a bit of polish and that was a genuine trap right there. He preceded them, and good thinking with your quirk there Eijiro. Breaking the ground so I didn't, meaning I'd be dazed instead of concussed. Well, you did say the best battles are won without fighting, so I figured using styles to minimize the fighting would work just as well. Good thinking, see already using your head Eijiro. As they arrived back at the observation room, they found Aizawa waiting with all might, an unnerving smile on his face. Izuku, good job on your first hero lesson. Your practical experience is already showing in spades. Well, I had some good partners to work with. A rather downtrodden Iida was stood at the side of the class. Now, let's go over what both teams did well and where they could improve. What did Midoriya do? I rushed in, Izuku shook his head, criticizing himself already. I didn't let my partner know of my plan and went into a fight where the odds were already stacked against me. At least on the surface anyway. Shoto raised his hand. Izuku radioed into his guy in the chair to try and get information. Once he had all information possible, he was able to act while his partner remained both unsure and inactive. Instead of drawing out a fight, he was able to quickly and effectively take me out of the running. Katsuki folded his arms. After using information he had prior to the fight, he was able to predict my attacks and outmaneuver me. Keeping in mind his information, Midoriya was able to reduce the amount of time he spent looking for the bomb, gaining back the time his first battle had taken. Jiru spoke up. He stopped paying attention to his surroundings when he found the room, allowing Kirishima to attack him from behind, but he quickly learned from that and remained aware of the entire room, enough to save Mina when the trap went sideways. Well, an accurate critique to be sure. Now what about young Iida? He remained impassive through the entire mission, ignoring the information his partner had requested and instead searching the entirety of each floor, costing him valuable time, not noticing the tape around Bakugo's ankle and almost instigating a fight with a captured person. On top of that, HS partner from even being an aid to the mission by asking him to sit out. Shoji lifted 3 hands. Even after hearing the crashing of rubble, Iida continued searching the close half of the second floor when his partner and quarry were all on the 3rd and 4th floors. Had it been a Junin situation, he would have endangered his life, the life of his partner and possibly any civilians because he did not react to the sound of destruction. And the villain team? Aizawa folded his arms. Bakugo recognized the danger their opponent posed and tried to buy his team time since he knew they had little in the way of preparation time. A self-sacrificing plan that could have resulted in success, except he fell into a habit when entering the fight. Hagakure jumped up and down since nobody could see her arm. He did change up when he realized Midoriya knew his moves, but again he used a plan of attack that was clearly a habitual shift. Katsuki only grunted in acknowledgement. Learning to improvise is an important skill, Aizawa nodded, and trying to get it is always difficult. Mina and Kirishima had a good trap, but they took too long deciding on what to do, which resulted in them losing prep time. Sato offered. They underestimated the experience of their opponent and that gave them several blind spots. However, Izuku has admitted to having 2 years of practical experience. Hitoshi lifted his hand lazily. They were outmatched from the beginning, but they still tried their best. Correct, young Shinso. Despite the disparity in their skills, both young Kirishima and young Mina tried their hardest against young Izuku. That requires true courage, and even though they lost, they should be proud of the effort and thought they put into the exercise. Iida, I hope this has opened your eyes. When All Might dismisses the class, I want you to come with me. We need to have a conversation. Understood, sensei. Oh, and Midoriya, after Monoma's incident at the beginning of the week, the teachers have been in discussion. As of this morning he was expelled. The students in his class were made aware of the situation. None of them hold it against you. Sekijiro wanted me to let you know the class is surprised by your patience. Well, those who didn't know you beforehand. Who's Monoma? What happened with him? Uraraka stepped forwards. Nothing, it's no concern anymore. Izuku waved a hand dismissively. It's all solved and dealt with now, so don't worry about it. Slowly walking away he smiled. You can call the class now All Might. Lesson's over. Back in the changing rooms, Izuku noticed a small hole in the wall. Jiru, he whispered. I know you can hear me. If you see the hole too, put a jack through it. One of her jacks quickly darted through the hole. Izuku pursed his lips, taking Shi's shirt off before continuing. Get Momo to make a rod of concrete, about 2 foot long, small enough to fit in the hole. The jack flicked up and down before disappearing back into the gap. Was that Jiru's jack just now? Mineta leant into Izuku. There a hole in the wall? Yes, there is, but we're just about to repair it. The purpleette shook his head. What? Just look at this. He reached behind his ear and pulled out a small purple ball. My hair is my quirk. So the longer I grow it out, the bigger the ball. For some reason it can still be cut and acts like hair unless I pull them off myself. Weird side effect of my quirk. Izuku made a mental note for his analysis. I don't know who'd drill a hole like that, but even I know it's wrong. And I know I'm no paragon of celibacy, but I mean, come on dude. The hole was plugged perfectly by the purple orb. I keep the hair behind my ears really short in case of things like this. Half the shelves in my room at home needed to be held together when I was repairing them. A quick sigh. I know I'm not subtle with my glances, but I gotta have something memorable about me. I mean look, I'm barely 5 foot and my outfit is ridiculous. Izuku hummed as he put his uniform on again. Take it to Power Loader, trust me. It's an insult to actual support mechanics everywhere. As for the height, guys don't stop growing until we're 21. So just eat healthy and work out. You'd be surprised at how quickly you gain height. Wait, really? That's it? Yeah dude. I work out every day, early riser and such. But just fit it in where you can. 10 sit-ups, 10 push-ups. Plank for a while, maybe go on a run as well. Instead of eating a chocolate bar, try something fruity. I remember I had a habit of eating an entire can of pear halves when I started working out. Just stuff like that and a good sleep cycle. You'll feel better about yourself, and I had a few growth spurts in the beginning. Seriously, I mean I also have a shit metabolism, so I can generally eat what I want. But I have to eat a lot more of the healthy stuff too since most of it doesn't get absorbed. Downside is I'm always hungry. Adjusting his tie he shook his head. I can tell by looking at you Mineta. You're not a bad guy and I don't want you to be one. Get a grip on those impulses. Start healthier routines and they'll fade to black in the back of your mind. In fact, Izuku hummed. Do you want a job Mineta? Where's this coming from? I run the Café Green Tea Coffee. It's got shop on UA grounds. There's also one on the high street if that'd be better for you. But if you worked there, we could put you on stock duty. So you'd be lifting heavy things and walking a lot. You'd be working with Hitoshi and Shoji too, so it's not like you'd be on your own. Wait, you're offering me a job to help me improve myself? It's what he did with the rest of us, Hitoshi gumbled. You should talk to Shoto for the real scope of what he's done. You don't have to say yes Mineta, I'll give you time too. No, thank you, but I'd like the job please, there's nothing to think about. Alright well then, come with me after school's over and we'll get the paperwork sorted. Would you also be wanting one of the apartments above the cafe? You offer housing too? Yes, but there's a few details I'd need to bring up when we get to the cafe. You get a 2 LDK to yourself. People take turns to buying the groceries for everyone with a pot everyone contributes to. A list it passed around the night before for people to pass on what they need. LPUS a few of the guys work out in the morning together. You'll join in if it helped you. Whoa, really Midoriya? You'd go so far to help me? It's not far Mineta, plus I get an employee out of it, so you could say it's in my interest to hire you. You just get a ton of benefits from it. He tapped the side of his nose. Again, it's optional. Say no if you want to. Are you kidding? Why would I pass up on an opportunity like this Midoriya? Of course. I'd like to move in as soon as possible. Does next weekend work? We won't give a shift until after that time as well. Why yeah, sure that works fine for me. You sure do like to do things fast Midoriya. Why waste time dancing around it when I can cut straight to the point? Izuku shrugged with a smile as they all finished changing. Mineta charged off ahead, bounding for the classroom to get lessons done as soon as possible. Izuku lugged his bag over his shoulder and joined with the other guys walking back. Falling into conversation was easy with the group as they walked and stepped to the classroom. Checking the clock, Izuku dropped his bag under Momo's desk and kissed her temple. Right, I got a jet to the business course, we're getting to the interviewing stage of their practice applications. Best ones get spots working the cafe during the day. Your judgment hasn't been wrong yet, so just don't be too cruel. She grabbed his tie and pulled his head down to kiss his cheek. See you when school's over. I'll be waiting outside for you and, Suka. Katsuki put an arm out to stop him before smirking. Give them hell Dekiru, like I wouldn't cats. Sharing a fist bump, the men grinned madly before the greenette swapped his lanyard TND walked down the corridors. He was going to show Ua just who he was before he left with 2 licenses. The business course was going to be his bitch. The hero course was no sweat. He was going to leave Ua with a warning to the world not to fuck with him, but first he was going to save Tamura. Class A was sat on the bus on their way to the USJ at long last. Everyone was excited, except for a single individual. Izuku found himself nearly vibrating with worry as he went over his plans for the attack he and Aizawa knew was happening. The moment they lost contact with the main campus, teachers and heroes would move in on his situation. Police would be notified to bring several transport vans along with several legions of quirk-dampening cuffs. He wasn't consumed by it, however, able to partake in the conversations going around. Say Midoriya, why did you become Jade anyway? Tsuyu Asui asked. A finger to the corner of her mouth. Surely it wasn't just for fun, right? No, actually, I made a name as Jade because for a year I toyed with the idea of being a hero. For a very long time Katsuki and 2 others were the only ones who said I could do it if I tried. Our neighborhood was an MLF nest, so almost everyone and their kid wanted me dead. Because I am quirkless when I was setting up green tea coffee. Katsuki once told me about Eraserhead and how he fights without a quirk boosting his abilities. For a year I pondered it and eventually I decided to try it. Only a night out jumping around, going for thugs. That same night I met Dobby, Crawler, Popstep and Knuckduster. We formed the 6. Together we revolved patrol nights. They used their quirks as little as possible. Knuckleduster is quirkless as well, but he used to be the hero at Clock until his quirk was stolen. He sighed. After the first night I began working with it, that vigilante group that caught the human trafficking ring a few nights later. It was our debut capture mission, something with high stakes. Normally we just take down the thugs acting up. Little things the heroes and police are too stretched to combat. Even if you are aiding the law, it makes no sense to break it like a rogue. Iida folded his arms, some lingering distaste. Didn't Crawler work with Ingenium at one point? Impossible. Tensai would never. No, he has. I believe Tensai gave Crawler tips to better control his speed. I've also worked with Crawler, a few years ago. He helped me take down a villain that was wrapped up in a massive investigation. The villain factory, right? Crawler told me about it in brief. It's how he and Popstep finally got together. Is that right? You heard nothing from me? Izuku immediately realized his mistake. You heard absolutely nothing. You know Koichi has an underground license, right? After he made so much difference we got him to sit an exam and he's an underground. The reason he keeps up the vigilante idea is because he gets better connections and has an easier time investigating the underworld. Kahuzo has a provisional too. Izuku blinked. Once, twice. Those motherfuckers, he barked out, startling everyone on the bus. I give them a roof, a flexible job, and they stabbed me in the back before I even turned around. He looked to Aizawa. Do you know how many times Dobby or Vampire could have used their quirk if Crawler gave them clearance? The whole reason I'm getting my license was to give those 2 permission when necessary. He folded his arms and smoldered as Aizawa chuckled, which put the entirety of the class on edge. It took several seconds for him to stop and the class to relax. At least you've got a flashy image, dude. Eijiro grinned. First quirkless pro in history, that's an incredible title. Izuku tilted his head. I'm not here for titles or fame though, I just want to help people. Classic nerd, Katsuki grunted. Izuku just rolled his eyes and smiled. 13 was waiting for them, outside of the USJ. Uraraka was fangirling over the space-themed hero while they tried explaining the dangers of rescue missions. Inside the USJ was 6 different zones. Ruins, landslide, mountain, conflagration, flood and downpour. Going in that order clockwise from the entrance. Izuku made sure his weapons were loaded with rubber and stun bullets. and that his blades were dull enough to not cut but strong enough to not break. Izuku, because of your pre-existing experience and as Nezu's personal student, you'll be with Aizawa and All Might in the observation room, if you three want to go ahead while I prep the rest of the class. Alright. Sliding the magazine into one handgun, he flipped the release as the slide clicked into place and his thumb pulled the hammer back and the safety off. Momo grabbed his wrist as he slid it into a holster. Be careful, she whispered, trust her to know something was off about the whole thing. I always am, he smiled, I promised to come back without a GSW this time. Kissing her cheek he joined up with All Might and Aizawa as the three walked into the arena. You know how risky this is, right? Toshinori muttered. I know you are confident in your skills, Izuku. Toshinori, being a hero is always going to be dangerous. Tapping the man's good side, he shook his head. Why should I avoid it just because I can't fight harder? That just means I have to fight smarter. There's a very real chance one of us won't be leaving here. Aizawa spoke in a low tone. I acknowledge and accept that risk. Whatever happens next. Izuku, thank you for helping me open my eyes. All Might, you've been an entertaining colleague. I know I may not leave this battle alive, especially since they are targeting me. Izuku, if that happens, I want you to leave me behind. The legacy dies with me. Thank you for teaching me lessons I never thought to learn. Aizawa, it's been an honor to mold the next generation alongside you. Having the highest chance of death out of the three of us. Aizawa, it's truly been a blessing to work with you and serve you in my cafe. If I am to die, please take care of them and tell Eri her papa is sorry. All Might, as a fan I will never get over meeting and working with you. As a student and co-worker, I'm humbled that you felt you have learned something from me. The massive door closed behind them, separating them from the outside world. Their communicators buzzed as they switched to a local frequency for the trio since their outside connection was being cut. However, I do not plan on allowing either of you to die today, and I plan to leave with more than we arrived. A purple misty portal opened up to allow a small ton of thugs and small-time criminals into the central plaza. Standing at the top of the stairs with a pro either side, Izuku smirked as confusion was slowly spread amongst the group below them. That being said, if it's to happen, today is a good day to die. With a battle cry, all three began charging down the stairs to fight. Another goon fell to a blow to the head. His guns weren't lethal but they were effective. Ducking under a punch, he swiveled on his heel to unleash a roundhouse kick. Aizawa had been launched through a portal on their charge and radioed in that he was working his way through the zones. Izuku had already chucked a taped-up taser into the flood zone. It was on a constant on state until the battery died in an hour or two. Meaning the thugs in there were already going to be out of it. Nezu had authorized lethal force but asked to be kept to a minimum, so a minimum it was kept to. Leaping up onto the fist of a mutant quirk criminal, he planted a foot in their face and kicked off. Power buzzed through his boots as he flipped in the air, waiting until he was head height to jump again, the shockwave knocking out those closest and dazing those behind them. Rotating in the air he continued to aim and fire his twin pistols. Personal lessons from Snipe on a gun range were very effective. The benefit of being a vigilante at UA? Nezu insisted he was fully trained in all forms of combat before school even started, including firearms. Landing on another thug's chest, he pistol whipped them in the face and jumped off again. As he looked around, he found the villain responsible for the teleporting. The goggles couldn't identify them and Izuku frowned behind his mask. Tamura should be here. Where was he? Landing again he spun around quickly, unleashing a hail ore using yet another criminal as a springboard. Scanning the area around the teleporter, he detected a life sign behind the villain. Great. Changing directions, Izuku continued to bounce through the horde of criminals trying to be villains. Seeing the sky blue hair he locked up and grit his teeth. Over the noise he could hear a voice trembling. Can't lose, had to win, gotta win, can't lose, not again. Tamura was scratching his neck again, a bad nervous tic they'd tried to help him get over. Kill the hero. The order came under an angry pretense but he could feel the fear and sadness hidden under the mask. It had been his once after all. Stowing his guns, he landed in a handstand and kicked both legs out, spinning on his hands. Creating a sufficient space he pushed off again and landed on a criminal's shoulders. Instead of waiting for them to fall, he kicked their temple and began running along the heads as a pathway. No. No no no, Tamura screamed as Izuku tackled him and they disappeared into the thicket behind him. Rolling along the floor, Izuku let him go and slid to a stop. Why you can't, don't stop me. Easy, easy, Izuku raised both hands. No, no, I have to. I have to win here, he'll do it again, it hurts, so much, no. Tamura tried charging him. Tamura. Pushing the faded blue net back, Izuku pulled off his mask. Hey, it's me, it's Izuku, I'm here, it's me. Everything stopped for a moment. It's me, I'm here, I got you. Izuku? No, this has to be no Tamura, it's really me. I swear it to you, green tea coffee is still running. We have a UA branch, listen, it's me. Gritting his teeth, Izuku lifted a forearm to his mouth. Biting into it, he didn't stop until he tasted blood. Look, see? Crimson dripped down his arm. If we're an illusion I wouldn't bleed, would I? Nor would you, but you're already bleeding from the neck. Oh God, Tamura's voice sounded strangled. You have to get out of here, he'll kill us both. No one's killing either of us today, Tamura. I swear right now, no matter what we're both leaving with a heartbeat. Why or why you? Here, Izuku smiled and put a hand into his pocket, pulling out a pair of drawing gloves. I got your message, I couldn't leave someone I care about high and dry, could I? Handing them to Tamura, he smiled softly. Work with me here and we can get out together, I promise. I'm not letting you go this time, you got it? I got it, good, take this. It's loaded with rubber bullets, won't kill but definitely going to sting. Aim for the forehead for knockout shots. We need to go for Kurogiri. Izuku was going to assume that was the teleporter's name. He's got a physical body under the mist but it's hard to reach. It's fine, we'll figure something out. Let's move, stick with me. Keep a hand on my shoulder whenever we're running, alright? Why, you mean it? We can get out of here? Yeah, and when we do, we'll figure out how to get control of your quirk, alright Tamura? Tenko? What? Tamura Shigaraki is a name he gave to me. If we really are escaping, my name is Tenko. They ran together out of the thicket, Izuku putting his mask back on as they emerged. Then let's get out of here, Tenko. They stopped against the group. Kurogiri sighed. Sensei told me this may happen. Tamura, I'm disappointed. My name's not Tamura, it's Tenko, and I'm not your little pawn anymore. Very well, Nomu. The hand on his shoulder tightened. Cease fighting, All Might. And killed Tamura Shigaraki. They stood back to back, both holding a gun up to the surrounding villains. Tenko, I know it sounds like a bad idea, but you need to take a glove off. They took turns firing as the other grabbed a magazine from his belt and reloaded. That thing's isn't staying down. Even a taser round to its brain doesn't keep it still for longer than a minute. It's got advanced regen, it's impossible to kill, it's designed to be the symbol of destruction. An anti-All Might. It's not the only one either, Izuku groaned. Luckily it's the only one they wanted to bring here. Wonderful, move. They ran away as the screeching creature leapt at them again. The greenette could tell his partner was flagging, while his aim was oddly incredible. The signs of starvation and injury were prevalent, from heaving breaths to shaking arms. It's also got shock absorption and super strength. It can take All Might's punches, since he's weaker now. He said All Might should die to this thing is his current state. Izuku's eyes widened. They didn't know Chisaki healed All Might. All Might! Izuku screamed. Back before we talked. The number one looked over to him. I asked what you'd do if a villain absorbed your punches. Punch it harder. Somehow he got the message, regaining his signature grin as he dashed towards the boys. Izuku grabbed Tenko and dragged him back slightly. Alright, Tenko, listen, we're going to do a triple strike here. All Might's going to keep it still. When he does, use me as a springboard. I'll duck so you can jump on my shoulders. I'm going to take this taser and jam between that fuck's eyes and you're going to dust its brain, alright? I can't, Izuku. It's a person. Well, if it's a person, it's most certainly in pain and we need to keep it down for long enough that the cavalry arrives. Izuku checked his watch, which shouldn't be long now. So do you have any suggestions? Send it up and away. If All Might can punch it hard enough while you fry the brain, it'll forget what orders it's been given, and if Kurogiri doesn't know the co-ords, he can't get the fucker back. They watched the blonde hero enter a punching competition with the Nomu. Izuku looked at Tenko and took a deep breath. Pulling some cord from the launcher, he handed the end to him. Hold onto that, wrap it around your wrist if you can, do not let it go. Dashing forwards, He heard the zipping of the cord. All Might, going up. He watched the hero adjust his posture, giving him a perfect ramp to the Nomu's head. Uppercut. Plus ultraa. Flipping in mid-air. Izuku lodged his taser into the Nomu's exposed brain, causing the body to spasm as All Might delivered a powerful blow to its chin, lower beak. Getting caught on its back as it began leaving the ground, Izuku lifted his fingers from the firing button for his grappler. Immediately the cord tightened and Tenko was pulled from the ground, where a portal was opening up beneath him. Hey! Izuku called out in adrenaline-fueled excitement. Sliding back down to fall off the Nomu as it rose, he crashed onto a criminal, knocking them out as they hit the concrete flooring. Kurogiri didn't realize the greenette had fallen behind him. It matters not, you defeated the one Nomu. All Might, we shall return and you will know defeat. Come Tamura, it is time to. I'm not going with you, you bastard, even if I have to claw my way out of here, I'm not going back. Nonsense, you have no more shots to fire, your new allies are tired and one is still around the area. What do you ha-ah? Kurogiri spasmed, as electricity arced around his body. What I have, is a taser, he grinned as the smoking form fell to the ground. So, who wants to go? Wisely, the criminals around him remained silent and unmoving. There was a loud whirring noise as the large doors began opening again, heroes and police rushing inside. Making his way over to Tamura, Izuku began to be aware of just how many injuries running from the Nomu gave him. We did it, Tenko. They slung an arm around each other to support the other, both grinning madly despite only now realizing just how badly they were beaten. You're safe now. All Might caught both boys as they fell. My everything hurts, Tenko groaned lightly, you get used to it. Really? No, Izuku let out a single agony-filled breath. Kai was going to have his head on a plate. They both came to on hospital beds, hooked up to heart monitors as Recovery Girl and Kai stood over them. Momo and Itsuka were stood the other side of his NGLY. Ah, you're both up. Wonderful, Kai stepped away from the beds. We have a lot of good news with a little bit of bad news. Bad news first, Izuku eased himself into a sitting position. What's happened? Well, currently, Ua and the police don't know what to do with Tenko. He'd be an incredibly aid in figuring out who the hell attacked the USJ, but they don't know how to. Hey Tenko, want a job? A slight groan. Welcome aboard, you're now a member of Green Tea Coffee, under my protection as well as UA's, and you live on Ua grounds. There. Bad news, sorted Kai. Should have known, but anyway, good news, police recovered the Nomu and it's been compliant ever since. There's also been no attempt to break it out. Both men nodded in acceptance. Better news, Tenko, catch. Whoa, wait. He caught the small object in his bare hand, his eyes scrunched up as he gingerly held it for 1-2 seconds. His eyes opened as he stared at his hand, turning it to show the object still intact, completely undamaged. We took scans to make sure all your internals were alright. Imagine our surprise when we found out Tenko here had signs of brain damage that healed incorrectly. We don't know how old it was, but it was in the part of your brain that controls the quirk. Kai grinned widely. So we performed some emergency surgery, opened up your head and I rewrote your brain into the correct healed state. But I've always had a problem with my quirk, ever since it came in, Kai hummed while Recovery Girl frowned. Tenko, did your parents ever hurt you? My mother didn't, but my dad got angry whenever I said I wanted to be a hero. It's entirely plausible the abuse led to the growth being interfered with and resulting in the incomplete formation of your quirk, meaning it remained at the uncontrollable formation stage, essentially that part of your brain was still akin to that of a 4-year-old's as the quirk was forming. Tenko still stared at his hand in shock. You mean, congratulations Tenko. Kai offered a hand to him. You have complete control of your quirk. Gingerly, Tenko shook the young doctor's hand, eyes widening and mouth agape in renewed shock and relief. Now he rounded on Izuku. You were still recovering from a surgery last week. Granted I did it and there wasn't anything like stitches, but your body was still healing from the bullet that was occupying it for 2 years. Charging into battle like that was straight up moronic, and what you were okay with dying. All Might, Eraserhead and I each exchanged final words before we began fighting. Yes, as an insurance in case one of us actually did die. Fortunately no one did. You had a broken rib, shattered arm, lacerations I can't even begin to describe. One toe bone was missing, it had been powered that badly. Honestly, you're lucky that your body was all in one place so I could rewrite your entire being. You've both been out since yesterday afternoon. Did we really spend that long in the horde? The heroes and police weren't expecting a sudden alert. Even the teachers didn't think you three would wander in ahead of schedule. Everything went according to plan, thank you very much. You had over 100 hairline fractures on 50 different bones. Was that part of the plan? Itsuka raised an eyebrow suspiciously. The heroes arrived when I planned they would. I got Tenko out in the way I had planned. We avoided losing each other and every walked out alive. You two were carried by all might. Momo shook her head. Semantics, they all turned as a door opened. Nezu walked into the room and climbed onto his bed. Greetings, you must be Tenko, correct? Yeah, who are you? My name is Nezu and I am the principal of this university. I have a few questions and suggestions on what we do next. Tenko, now, did you receive an education? I can read and write kanji, basic maths and sciences. Otherwise it's just manipulation and knowing what other people are going to be thinking or doing. Nezu made a small noise. Alright. Well, you can do some online learning for a few weeks and gain a high school diploma. After that I'd suggest joining one of UA's courses. As a third year, all we need to do is catch you up academically and I suspect that won't be too difficult. You taking him on? I will. We'll have different lessons to Izuku, but solely to make sure Tenko can catch up to his peers. The big three should be a great help in catching him up in that respect. I'm not going to be a hero. Tenko folded his arms. The brunette sighed. How about we don't make that decision right now, Tenko? If you change your mind while studying and living with us you might regret. So how about we just wait until we get to that bridge, alright? Sure, if you think that's a good idea, I'll go with you, Izuku. Wonderful, that actually solves the situation rather quickly. I shall leave you both to rest now. The chimera nodded and began to walk away. Kai hummed quietly. Well, you're going to be on painkillers for another hour just to make sure the rewrite hasn't left any lingering pain. It does sometimes, so I'd rather keep you in for now. Understood, Kai. Izuku nodded. Get comfy, Tenko, we'll be here a while. Toshinori. Izuku walked into the street cafe office. Where is he? Tuya unfazingly looked up from the paperwork. Should be in the back with a wow. Before you go though, I need a signature, giving us permission to knock a few walls down and such. Then we can wheel Cementos and Powerloader in to get everything done in a few hours. Plus the new deliveries we'll be getting for herbal brews, so mom has her corner. Izuku rolled his eyes and read the contracts. No, this one, no, there's a bunch of hidden costs with this business. Throwing the paper away he picked up another and quickly scanned the text. This one should do. Signing everything quickly he walked out of the office towards the stockroom door. Pausing momentarily to greet Kaneki and Tuka. We heard about the attack on the USJ, is everyone alright? Yeah, the school got wind of it before it happened. The class waited outside while a few heroes went in and cleared the place out. Izuku smiled with a light head shake. All Might was there. It was surreal, I'll say that much. Jiro's fine, Tuka. He asked me to pass along a message if I saw you. The school work has been swamping him recently, since we all had to do catch-up studying cause the USJ was cancelled and all. That's fine, so long as I know Rock for Brains is alive. Mom and Dad won't worry, she nodded gently. You're not just here for pleasantries though, are you? No part of the attack force turned out to be a prisoner. They were torturing the poor bastard and we think Toshinori may know them. Toshinori did know them. He just didn't realize he knew them. So I'm just stealing him from the store to visit them in Ua for the evening. Sounds like a nice gesture. Well, we won't keep you then, Izuku. Go be a hero. Again. Kaneki grinned, rolling his eyes good-naturedly. Sharing a grin he bid the couple goodbye and walked into the stockroom. Oh wow. Where's Toshinori? Tall and scrawny is over there. He's moving a few boxes from delivery to front and center for when Tuya's gonna need them. Thanks. Oh, and just randomly, if we could get your quirk back, would you? No, whatever you're thinking of trying, it'd be a no. As a hero I was more than just my quirk, but nobody realized, as I am, people respect my ideals more than anything, so I prefer to be how I am. Why? Oh, no reason, a theory came into my head and I just figured I ask in case we needed to test the theory. Alright. Well, Glug boss, thanks. Oh wow. Keep up the good work. Maybe take tomorrow off. You have been working hard lately. Might do. Sounds like a treat right now anyway. He joked as the brunette walked away. Toshinori was in fact lifting boxes down from a high shelf and moving them into a more accessible location, while his true form, as they dubbed it, was leaner. Anyone who'd seen All Might up-close foe would be able to tell it was him. Toshinori, Izuku. What can I do for you? I need you to come with me for a few. It's about a few days ago. Putting down the box, he nodded. Lead the way. Together they quickly moved onto the street and began heading for the police station. Izuku spoke quietly. They found the Nomu and it tested for several quirks as Tenko said. Eri wanted to try and help So with Kai's oversight. She rewound the Nomu back to before it was screwed around with. It was a regular street thug. Someone reported missing several months ago actually. Guy was in so much pain he passed clean out when Eri stopped. Kai ran some tests and the guy's completely normal again. Septi's got some serious PTSD. Sukachi wanted to talk to you about it. They reached the police station and walked straight in. The officers let them pass until they reached an office. He's here, Izuku announced as they entered the room. All good, Toshinori. I have some files I need All Might to go over. I know I shouldn't really be giving them to a civilian but we can't get hold of All Might right now. So you're our best bet. It was an obvious lie. One all three men knew. Except it was more for the precinct in case anyone was within earshot. You got it, detective. I'll get these to him ASAP. Anything else? No, everything's there. Alright, see you around. Bye, see y'all later Sukachi. Izuku closed the door and quickly began leading Toshinori through the crowd outside again. Where are we going now, Izuku? There's someone you really need to meet. What? Who on? It doesn't, look, I can't explain it, but you need to trust me right now. I know this person is going to be good for you, for both of you. Tenko wasn't as sly as he thought he was. He'd let his last name slip by accident while they'd been in the hospital and Izuku had done a quick search on the internet and found some rather concerning relations. Of course Nezu was happy to do a double check and it came back double positive, meaning there was no way Izuku was wrong. Not this time. The duo marched onto Uwa grounds, making a beeline for the cafe. Izuku, I'm afraid I must really ask for an answer. Again Toshinori, it's difficult to put into words, or at least, it is right now, but I need you to really work with me here, alright? Please, this is going to help you a lot. Despite the odd looks from others on the grounds, Izuku remained steadfast and flat-faced, practically dragging the man behind him. As they closed in on the cafe, he could feel Toshinori's panic and briefly stopped. Look, you're the number one. He hissed at the clammy blonde. If there was a danger here or a trap, Nezu would have put me away already. If it was someone that was going to hurt you, I would have put them down already. Now man up and come with me. Resuming the march, he felt less resistance from Toshinori as they pushed through the front doors. Tenko had his back to the door but began welcoming them as he turned. Welcome to Green Tea Coffee. My name is Tenko Shimura. What can I owe? His face fell as he saw Toshinori, easily identifying the number one hero. Once the last name registered to the hero, his mouth fell agape and his eyes grew to dinner plates. At that moment in time, two voices said the same two words, in two very different ways. It's you. Leaning back in his seat, Izuku couldn't believe his luck. Green Tea Coffee had received an invite to open a store on Island. Island. An email from David Shield detailing the retail portion of the island and how the best of the best were on those streets. And they wanted his cafe there, all because Uwa had a site on their grounds. Izuku shook his head. It was going to be the first international location, which meant Green Tea Coffee was already growing massively. They didn't have double-digit locations in Japan. Humming to himself, he made a note to change that. Nezu's help would be appreciated in that aspect too, as it revolved around a large budget. He'd have to find someone he trusted to actually run the place and keep in contact with him while he was back in Japan, but Island, to say he was excited would be oversimplifying it. There was so many benefits that could come from the growth, but it was also so dangerous for him. If it failed, Green Tea Coffee was gone, but if it succeeded, it would quickly become a worldwide cafe name. Which was like the dream for him. His cafe for heroes known worldwide. He'd reach the top of what he could see right now and then he'd be able to aim even higher. The possibilities were incredible to say the least. So, young Izuku, how are you feeling? He looked away from the window into the inside of the jet. Honestly, excited and scared and a whole lot of other things. Toshinori, he sighed, there's so many things that could go wrong or right here. Tenko, what do you think? I think this whole thing is dumb. You're already doing really well. Using this as a way to go worldwide is just stretching too thin. I mean, who's going to even run this place while you're back in UA? Someone I can trust, hopefully. Izuku shrugged. If no one from Japan, then maybe someone I meet down there that's capable of doing it. I think I have the person in mind. Toshinori held up a thumb. My old friend David has a daughter about your age. I think she'd love the challenge of running one of your stores. Tenko blew a raspberry in argument. Izuku bit back a small laugh. It had taken many hours, but the two had begun to finally get along. His mind flashed back to their first real meeting. It's you, Tenko spoke with annoyance and rage while Toshinori was close to falling to his knees. Izuku quietly sat down at a table and watched the scene unfold. Are you really Nana's grandson? Nana? The fuck's that? Izuku could see the metaphysical arrow that pierced Toshinori's heart. She some kinda ex to you or something? She was. She was my mentor, a guiding figure to me, perhaps even a parental one. When the internships roll around, you should go and see Gran Torino. He would have more information for you. But she was very important to me and we believed you may be her grandson. My family died when my quirk came in, because my bastard of a father damaged my head before it fully developed. He hated heroes with a passion because one abandoned him. I just about bear you guys because Izuku's helped me a lot and he seems to like you. Tenko, the greenette decided to step in before it got too tense. Did you know your father's name? Kotaro Shimura. Why? Toshinori did fall to his knees at that, jaw dropped open. Don't tell me he was an ex or something. He was, that's Nana's son, she hid him away to protect him. She was never there for his development because she was afraid All for One would find him. Yeah, that was a real shit job there, Izuku shrugged, because All for One found him anyway. All for One? Sensei, Izuku supplemented, Nezu's teaching me about the origin of quirks. He's a very prevalent name until about 5-6 years ago. I would have been 13 at the time? Yeah. I was so caught up in Mom's death that I completely missed the news about All Might's titanic clash with the King of Villainy. I remember that, Sensei was suddenly bound to a hospital bed, needing constant life support systems to keep him alive. Toshinori coughed up blood. You mean, he is still alive? If you could call it living. Tenko shook his head. Psycho has tubes in his neck so he can breathe. No hair, no eyes, a pacemaker, the works. His doctor is trying to procure a support item he can wear on his head to do it all for him so he can walk about again. Izuku, no, if Tenko's telling the truth, we can beat the bastard as a team. You don't, he's strong isn't he? Took your lung and stomach didn't he? Now, did you grow them back? No, who did? Kaichi Saki, that's who, a friend of mine. Who gave him the idea? Me. Who helped him? Green tea coffee. Who put Endeavor away? Green tea coffee and Uwa working together. Toshinori. Face it, All Might at full power can't defeat him. I won't have anywhere near enough control over to beat him, so only solution, beat him as a team. I already know enough heroes with enough skills that complement each other. When you and other heroes fight him, you don't work together. The green tea coffee family will. Me included, especially after I talked to this Gran Torino. Sensei told me about One for All and the previous users. Nana Shimura was the 7th, you are the 8th, if you're telling the truth. He murdered my grandma, and caused the whole thing with my dad too. I want payback. Their relationship was rocky to say the least. Internships weren't for another month yet and in that time they had the I-Island Expo and the sports festival to go through first. The greenette picked up the brochure. Normally the expo would be held after internships, but for whatever reason, they had decided to change the scheduling to better suit the beginning of the academic year. He wondered if it had anything to do with the I-University finally opening. In fact, it was probably that. Getting the major event out of the way so the students could better focus on studying and then they had a full year to prepare for the next one and show off how much they'd grown. Putting it before the sports festival also meant it got a larger amount of media coverage instead of being between event highlights and news about which hero in training was with which pro. Rubbing his chin he stretched. Thanks for letting us use the private jet, Toshinori. Don't worry Izuku, it was the least I could do after everything you've done for me. The blonde waved a hand. Tenko huffed. Why am I coming anyway? Mainly so I can keep you safe if I'm honest, Izuku shrugged. Tuya's going first class on a regular plane with Rumi because she wants to find better material for her suit and I was thinking you two would get along while you're free. It never hurts to make more friends. He's also a chaotic dumbass, so you could bring him in line more than I could. You had me at chaotic dumbass. Tenko reclined his seat. What about the others? Well, most of them could afford to visit. The hero course students got invites to come anyway. Normally the first place student in the festival gets it, but well, they've switched it up this year, not like they need the funding anyway. This place is fucking loaded with patent-making scientists, like David Shield and his daughter Melissa. Wait. His eyes narrowed as he looked to Toshinori. She wouldn't happen to be your old friend's daughter, would she? I mean, I know All Might worked with David Shield for a. He paused. Oh my god, it is. Bingo, you. Oh my god. Please tell me you haven't arranged a meeting yet? I don't even have a casual suit, Tenko cackled. Casual suit? That's too good. Do you need me to get you a silver spoon, or is there already one up there? First impressions are important, chapstick. Using Katsuki's new nickname for him, Izuku gave Tenko the stink eye. She's one of the best minds in the world and she's only 18. Ah yes, she is the same age as you. I forget sometimes with how mature you are, Toshinori chuckled. However, I doubt you will need a suit, Izuku. You have enough shirts and waistcoats to give off a professional yet casual look. Izuku slumped in his seat. I want my girlfriends, soon, just cause you don't have Nijire to stutter around. You take that back, you bastard, Izuku grunted as he slid his suitcase under the large bed. Itsuka and Momo sat down on it as he stood up. So, All Might set you up on a date with Melissa Shield? Does he not know? It's not a date, Suka. He kissed her cheek gently. I'm just interviewing her while we look at the site. If I think she can do it, she'll be the manager for the cafe here and possibly regional of the cafes if more than one opens in time. When you interviewed me to be a manager, we spent the entire time just messing around in your office. It was necessary to have an interview, but we didn't need to do anything because I knew you could do it in your sleep. He kissed Momo's forehead. Look, I promise. There will be nothing romantic between me and her. I promise. Walking into the bathroom, he quickly stripped, not caring to close the door. They'd both seen everything anyway. Turning on the shower, he continued. I'll talk with Melissa this afternoon, come back and take you both out to dinner. Does that sound fair? Quickly washing himself, he ran his hands through his wet hair. Momo sighed as he added shampoo to his green locks. We know, we trust you, it's just, well, we don't trust her, Itsuka continued. We know it's not exactly fair to say since, well, we're sharing each other, but, well, Nye. He could feel her hands moving as she ran out of words and just made a random sound. I mean, she's the Melissa Shield, daughter of David Shield. She can do what she wants to. The girl's crazy smart, like you. She's attractive, like you, and she's quirkless, like me. He stepped out of the shower with a towel around his waist, which is the main concern, isn't it? We're both quirkless, facing discrimination, and you're worried we'll seek shelter in each other's arms. They both looked down at their laps in shame. He shook his head. You two are aware you're the reason I can stand shirtless right now? You've given me that much confidence in who I am. I can. Wait a minute. He checked the door to the room was locked. No misunderstandings today, thank you very much. As I was saying, you've given me enough confidence in myself that I can do this. Letting the towel drop, he walked over to the dresser now laden with clothes and began dressing himself in front of them. Best part? We're so happy in our relationship. None of this is overtly sexual, because we don't just focus on the sex. Still incredible though, Momo mumbled. Izuku chuckled. And just like that my ego swelled another 10 sizes. He waved a hand, pulling his trousers up. But seriously, there will be nothing between Melissa and I. As far as I'm concerned, you two are the only women I need in my life. Slipping his shirt on, he began buttoning it up as he turned to them. It's a strictly professional business meeting, that's all. Walking over to them as he threw his waistcoat on, he began trying to do up the tie around his neck. We know you'll remain professional, we're concerned she won't. Momo nudged his hands up and began trying the fabric correctly. Honestly, you'd think you'd know how to tie a tie by now. Maybe I just like when you two tie it, he offered, kissing her forehead again. Momo's hand pushed the knot until it sat against his neck. He made a small strangled noise as Momo pecked his cheek and sat back down on the bed. Itsuka huffed and stood up, loosening the tie off and making his collar look neater. She might flirt with you, she might make a pass, not take no for an answer, you know. I understand, I do. He smiled, kissing her forehead, and if it counts to anything, I'm jealous you two get to have a nice lunch date today while I'm forced to do work. Well, just think of it as incentive to get it done quickly. she teased, kissing his nose. Now, we've got to get ready for a date, Mr. Businessman. Rolling his eyes, he quickly kissed them both goodbye before leaving the hotel room. The blonde Shield was waiting for him in the lobby, dressed in a white dress shirt with a raspberry pink waistcoat, along with faded gray capri pants and heeled brown boots. "Ah, Mr. Midoriya, Miss Shield, ready to see the sight? Please, lead the way." The duo left the hotel climbing into a taxi as Shield gave the directions to the driver. "It's impressive," he mused, walking out from behind the counter. "Open floor plan, lots of seating, large stockroom, enough room for 4 machines. There's also a direct route to the I-Island Bank. You'll have to do some paperwork to make the company account international." "Paperwork I can handle," a dismissive handwave. "The location is great. Midway through the main street where most shoppers begin looking for a place to rest. Decent outdoor sitting. Is upstairs for the cafe as well?" "Yes, though it's not furbished, wouldn't expect it to be. You're offering me a location. It'd be rather rude to expect the place to be furbished. Plus it's not like I don't have the cash available for it." They turned to the front door as the opening bell jiggled. "Ah, Mr. Shield, Toshinori." "Dad, Uncle Might." Melissa grinned and walked over, hugging both men. Izuku took in the founder of I-Island. He was tall, just over 6 foot if Izuku had to guess, faded blue shirt with the 2 top buttons undone, gray jeans and blue sneakers. Biting back a hum, he realized what Toshinori meant when he'd said professionally casual. "You must be a representative." Mr. Shield offered a hand. "I'm David Shield, the one that Toshi. Why are you laughing?" Izuku grinned wildly and shook his hand. Izuku Midoriya, founder and current CEO of Green Tea Coffee. The door opened again and Tuya came in, dressed in an all-black suit, his hair slicked down. "And this is Tuya Himura, my second in command as it were." "Oh, my apologies Mr. Midoriya, you are younger than I was expecting." "It's alright Mr. Shield, I get that a lot." Izuku waved a hand, a playful smile on his face. "However, it never ceases to amuse me." "Tuya, was the flight alright?" "Rumi fell asleep the second we were airborne, so it was kinda boring, but the movies were good. Found the hotel easy. She's getting familiar with the place for when we go looking for souvenirs and things." Quickly he shook hands with both Shields. "Sorry for my tardiness. I took a wrong turn more times than I cared to admit. Rumi took the map with her, you see." "Rumi, as in Rumi Usagiyama? The rabbier heroine Maruko?" "The very same, however I believe it's a story for another time." "It's one I'd also like to hear actually," Izuku hummed, "because the first interaction I remember you having was her trying to threaten you into making her a drink illegally." "Moonshine? Not quite, Dave. In Japan they need licenses to serve heroes. It was a means to try and prevent corruption by having heroes take bribes to stop in certain stores during patrols as unofficial advertisement and endorsement. Young Izuku is aiming to get one for his cafe along with his own hero license." "You're a dual student?" Melissa gasped in awe. "No, I'm Nezu's personal student. Since I already run Green Tea Coffee, he's asked me to help teach the business course while also learning under him. I've already got ex-villains working for me. Well, I say ex-villains, Kai and Pops were Hisaki. And Tenko was an unwilling villain we rescued from the USJ attack." "So you're a hero student while studying under Nezu on top of running your own business?" "Did I mention I've also been a vigilante for the past 2 years? David rubbed his eyes. "I can see now why your teacher calls you a problem student." "Aizawa loves me really," Izuku chuckled, "but anyways, this site is the most promising, Tuya. If you want to give it a quick look." The man nodded and walked into the shop. "Now, about payment." "Mr. Midoriya, there's no payment. We did invite you to launch a site here, didn't we? So long as it's to your liking, the space is yours. Now it's a question of who to leave in charge. I obviously can if the UA staff are in fact other students using it as a part-time job/experience. Tuya mans the street store and there's nobody else there who'd be able to cope with the workload." "I could do it," Melissa offered. "I mean, I could easily fit it around my university work. I know people who'd appreciate the work as a change of pace." "I couldn't ask that of you, Miss Shield. You're already far too busy being such a brilliant mind." "Honestly, I don't mind, Mr. Midoriya, it'd be a pleasure. If you are sure, then I won't stop you, but if there's ever a problem or you feel the need to take a step back, let me know. Of course, we'll have to deal with the paperwork later, I'm afraid." He checked his watch. "I've got a date in a couple minutes, so if you'll excuse me." Won't worry about it, Mr. Midoriya. We'll talk more about it at the dinner tomorrow evening. David smiled as the group walked out of the door, Tuya quickly joining them and giving his nod of approval. See you then. Gently he and Itsuka swayed around the room. Hey, you look stunning, he reassured her as she looked glumly at his chest. She was in a turquoise ankle-length pinnacle dress. It showed her figure nicely and had a slit over her left leg up to her knee, so she could move comfortably. A pair of dark blue heels put her at his height while they slowly waltzed around the floor. You're just saying that, Suka, honey, you should know I'm the last person to just say things. Slowly they returned to the table and sat either side of Momo, who'd chosen a ruby-red dress similar to Itsuka's, except where Itsuka's was strapless. She had a single strap over her left shoulder. You both look gorgeous. Are you sure you don't want to dance, Momo? I never learned how to Izu, and I'm afraid now it's not the best place to do so, the Ravenette shook her head gently. It's alright, Momo, Zuku's got 2 left feet too. I do not. If it's about how you look, I can guarantee you'd get less. None of that, thank you. Izuku shook his head. Neither of you get to say anything. You both look perfect to me. That doesn't matter here. I can tell you both with absolute honesty. There's been at least 7 guys and 4 women that haven't taken their eyes off you or closed their mouths yet. He subtly cracked his knuckles. Not that I'm counting or anything. No hitting anyone, Zuku. Itsuka shook her head. Not tonight away. So you're saying I can tomorrow? Just don't make a scene. Momo sighed. Suddenly blue light shone from the ceiling and began restraining the heroes at the event. Izuku looked around the room as people began walking in. I think someone else has that handled right now. Guns were pointed at the people in the room. Heroes stuck on the floor trapped in hard light restraints. Izuku tried finding Toshinori in the crowd, locking eyes with him. A very slow shake of his head. Greetings, ladies and gents, a man spoke with a deep menacing voice. We hate to interrupt your evening, but you're all gonna be a bit tied up for now. Izuku grit his teeth. Now, David, if you want to help these people, I'd suggest coming with me for a minute. We need your assistance. The greenette did not like the sound of that. Fine, just make sure nobody gets hurt. They won't, so long as they behave. He grit his teeth as he watched David get dragged from the room. Turning back in his seat, Izuku slowly reached into a pocket on the inside of his blazer, pulling his mask and goggles out. Izuku Midoriya, do not tell me, Momo hisses at him. I'm wearing it under the suit. It's not paranoia if someone's actually after you. The only thing he didn't have were his guns, which was unfortunate, considering he'd prefer to have non-lethal takedowns. Faking a coughing fit, he fell out of his seat, a hand clutching his throat. Help, please, he's choking. Itsuka played along, kneeling beside him. Neither of us have our suits with us. I hope you know what you're doing. He flashed her a SMLIE as he coughed. Move. One of the grunts grabbed her shoulder and squatted in front of Izuku. Oi, Biki. Launching himself forward, Izuku tackled the grunt and slammed him into the ground. Stealing the handgun from his side, he rolled to the right as gunfire hit the grunt. Sliding under a table, he stood up and launched it onto its side as a makeshift cover. There were cries of pain as he took out kneecaps and elbows, the thugs falling to the floor. Tossing the empty magazine to the side, he crouched at the nearest thug and stripped him of ammunition, doing the same to each one. Miss Shield, where are all his inventions stored? At the top of the tower. If they put the place in lockdown, we have no chance of getting there. Well, I'll just have to take the unconventional route then. Where's the nearest window? Absolutely not. Are you insane? Itsuka stormed forwards. It's one thing to fight this lot, but you can't scale a building. I have the cords, I have the kit. I'll get Shield to safety and let the heroes take care of this. Jade, Toshinori spoke lowly. This is exceedingly dangerous. You're already part of a hostage situation. Correction, you are already part of a hostage situation. Those not clearly identified as heroes aren't, such as Maruko, who's not in her hero costume for once. Tuya lifted an arm to stop said heroine from launching herself at him. However, I'm the only one with my equipment here. Nobody else is bulletproof. We are. Eijiro and Tetsu stood up from their table, dressed in similar suits. Let us come with. You two find the security room and undo all this. I'm going to make sure the bastard doesn't escape until then. Wait, Melissa stepped forwards. Take me with you. I know the place. Go with those two. They'll need directions more than I will. The blonde nodded, clearly fraught with worry as the groups headed for the door. Testing the large window wall, Izuku tapped it with a knuckle. "Boys, break it down." Both men activated their quirks as they punched the window, causing a large crack to run across the pane diagonally. With another double punch they made a sizable hole in the clear structure. With a nod the party parted ways, Izuku leaping out of the window and firing a cord skywards. Immediately Whipped began whipping his hair and howling in his ears as he first began falling before being pulled up the building. As he approached the top, he landed silently beside the stairwell exit, leaning flat against the wall. A helicopter was waiting on the helipad with the pilot checking his controls. The door burst open and Izuku acted. Whoever they were dragging David behind them. He was injured. A gunshot to his shoulder by the looks of it. His goggles pinged and he twisted to the left, avoiding a briefcase swung at his head. Immediately a gun was pulled and there was the sound of a hammer being pulled back. "What are you going to do now, Pipsqueak?" they growled to him. The barrel tapped his forehead. Izuku sighed and looked them in the eye. "Do I at least get to know your name before you kill me?" His hands raised up. "Wolfram. UCAURF. In that second Wolfram had smirked. Izuku smacked the gun up and delivered a powerful blow to his gut. His borrowed pistol was drawn and he fired a shot into Wolfram's thigh. "You little. You want to keep talking while I have a gun trained on you? Do you really?" Growling, he began bluffing to the masked man, grabbing him by the shirt and pulled him to his feet. "I ain't afraid of you." "You should be," Wolfram growled as his eyes glowed. Izuku smirked as nothing happened. "And yet, here we are." He pushed the barrel against Wolfram's mask. Most guns today are made with a beryllium copper alloy base. It helps prevent those with magnetic or ferrokinetic quirks from stealing them. Guns like the early 21st century styles are custom orders nowadays, so your little disarming attempt won't work. "I'm not after the gun, just the bullet?" "You mean the lead bullet? That isn't magnetic in any way," sends NG Wolfram around. He put the villain in an arm lock and began marching him down the stairs. "Shield, behind me. Bring the briefcase too." Slowly but surely, they began clearing out the building. The shutters lifted as Eijiro and Tetsu reached the security room. Toshinori and Tenko met him halfway down from the roof. The hero taking the villain the rest of the way down to the waiting police and Interpol. "Neat trick, but I could have taken the glass out for you instead." "True, but we don't need to expose you yet. People still remember the rumors of the UA barrier being disintegrated." Izuku shook his head. "Come on, let's just get back downstairs." His phone began buzzing in his pocket. "Hang on a second." Pulling it out he checked the caller ID before answering. "Go." Mild to massive problem." Kai's voice floated through the speaker. "Just turn it off, check the pipe pressure and, no it's not that, there was a small scuffling, you tell him." "Me? Why me? You saw the fucking thing," Koichi argued. "Get out to do it or something." He read the email. "So did you, and you've been here longer than me." "Guys, what's happened? You left your private email up when you left." Kai put the phone back to his ear. We didn't mean to look but, well, just, check your email real quick please." "Fine, but if it's some SP," flicking through his phone, he froze as he read the email. "Izuku, I know it's been a long time since we last saw each other, but I'm back in Japan and I visited Inko. She's told me all about your success. Congrats, I'm so proud of you. Anyway, I'm not in town for very long, business and all. So I was thinking we could spend some time together and recapture the old bond. What'd you say? Love and pride Dad." His phone clattered to the ground as he stared into the foreground. No, Tenko, get somebody please." Without a word, he turned and ran off, desperate to find anyone that could help. The greenette stood dead still before falling to his knees and staring at the device. "Izuku, are you alright?" Kai shouted through the phone. "Izuku? Izuku?" He just stared, dissociating completely. Pictures flashed through his mind. An angry face, a stinging pain in his cheek, the smell of smoke nearly choking him, yelling and screaming with doors slamming every which way. His mother smiling tiredly with a pale face as they visited the post office. An emotional weight to the papers she was carrying. Acutely aware of arms wrapping around him, he just remained in a permanent state of unmoving shock. His dad was back.